Namaskar, sir. Namaskar. Hello. Namaskar.
Hi.
Hello, hi.
Namaskar. Namaskar. Hello, sir. कैसे हैं आप? How are you all doing?
We are all fine and eagerly waiting for this. Hello, Shikha ji. Hello.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.
Hi, Shikha.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
It's really so wonderful of Professor Rana ji because we have become friends, technical and human friends. How is it in the US?
Yeah, we are very happy.
Yeah.
We got rid of Trump now.
In fact,
Yes, no, it's such a great relief. Yeah,
it's
we are doing good.
Relief is the right word. It's a great relief. It's a great relief.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
So I think we will start. Yeah, it's 2:40. Yes. After live. Namaskar. A very good afternoon. Welcome to the technical session 8 of Bharata-Tirtha, the pilgrimage to eternal India. This session, like all other sessions, is a very coveted one, a session which is very close to my heart. I being an architect and also a regional planner, and more than so, have an opportunity to work in different parts of India, not so much so like Madam Shikha Jain, and not also so much so like our chairperson, whom I have the pleasure to introduce in a moment. But through one project, which is a science and heritage initiative, I was really amazed by the greatness of a person whom we have as a chairperson today in this session. In those 4 or 5 years, I had the great pleasure to meet Professor Rana P.V. Singh, one of the greatest living stalwarts of Indian cultural heritage and physical sciences, that expresses India as a land of eternal heritage, as a land of sacred landscape, cultural landscape, and as a land of great spirit, and as a land of assimilation. I had the opportunity to visit Harvard once, and there I had met Professor Diana L. Eck. So the moment I met her, she asked me, "How is Ranaji? I mean, do you know him?" I said, "Yes, I know him so well." And so it was just for a few seconds, but it meant a lot to me. So it meant a lot to me. And everybody knows Diana Leck's book, Varanasi, Kashi, the City of Light. So this is a session which culminates, I think, the whole of Bharata-Tirtha. And the first session was on economics. And Varanasi has been always famous for economics. It had been a maritime city. The second session has been Sanskrit. Varanasi has been the city of Sanskrit. I'm talking about Varanasi as the epitome of India. The third session was on mathematics, and a lot of scholars originated in Varanasi. The fourth session was on Rasayana, chemical sciences, and the fifth was on Ayurveda. A lot of progress there also. And the sixth session, the Vedanga, the Jyotirtata Mahajagatik Vidya, was also a great outcome of the city of Varanasi. And the last session was Prakriti Vidya, which is ecology. But when you culminate all of that together as one single domain of physical expression, physical experience, and its translation to cultural, normative, behavioral, and psychological therapeutics, where space design becomes a media of healing, where an iconography becomes a vehicle of purgation and human development, and where the entire physical space or landscape becomes a tirtha, a sacred landscape. So I think this session means a lot, a culmination, normally which is not touched or covered yet in the domain of Indian knowledge systems or IKS. So with this, I'll give it to our esteemed chairperson, Professor Rana P.V. Singh, whom I think everyone knows, and to all the listeners and the participants and the students and the scholars who are witnessing this session. Professor Rana P.V. Singh had been formerly the Professor of Cultural Landscapes and Heritage Studies at Varanasi Hindu University. He is the president of one of the most renowned associations of the world, which is the Asia Cultural Landscape Association, which spans different countries and connects Korea and India. Professor Singh has also been the contributing member of ICOMOS, IFLA, ISC, which works on cultural landscapes, and he is the executive member and advisor to ICOMOS, ISC, and so many other organizations like ICOMOS, IKLA. And more than that, Professor Singh has been receiving, hundreds of awards, initiating from Ganga Ratna, Kaushal Ratna, and many others. But the most important thing about Professor Singh is that whenever somebody enters India, and especially Varanasi, he or she has to pick up a book written by Professor Singh. There's so many books on India, on the sacred cultural landscape by Professor Singh. So it will be my pleasure to give the session to Professor Singh, and this session will be rapporteured by Dr. Akhi Banerjee of Ranbir and Chitragupta School of Infrastructure Design and Management, IIT Kharagpur, and Dr. Priyanka De of the Department of Architecture and Regional Planning. And it is my pleasant duty right now to introduce and to invoke this session and hand over the mandate of this session to Professor Rana P.B. Singh ji to take over and introduce the speakers and do the pleasant task. Thank you, sir. Pranam. It's over to you. Thank you, sir. Sir, you may unmute. You may unmute yourself. Yeah.
Unmute.
Yeah, sir.
That's okay?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Okay. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to have a share. So we say in Sanskrit, Yatha Namo Tatha Guna. So we have started with a joy, everything very pleasant. So Yatha Namo Tatha Guna. It means as the name, so thy fame. He is the man that he can start from anywhere and then put something ethereal, breathe of joy. Prasanna Chitta. Okay. So let me say a few sentences. Today I have written down about that our session, that when we are trying to say Bharata-Tirtha, that is roots, if you say Patanjali Sutra, that is light. And Rata, to carry on. It means light to carry on. And when we are add the word Tirtha, that in geological sense, in geosciences, we say contact point. The wetness of water and hardness of soil meet together. And that's how in English we translate as a food, but in Hindi or in Sanskrit, that is a combination of the two stages. What we say, profane to sacred, materials to transcendental, or humane to divine. This way linkages. This way, Bharatiya Jnana Paddhati, in Sanskrit or Hindi or in Bengali, Indian knowledge system, is a path of Sanatan Parampara that interconnects, generalizes, and further giving the way for the global ordering towards future. What we call it interconnectedness among succession, the past, sustenance, the present, and sustainability, the future. This is a procedural and deeper march of life philosophy and is initiated through realization, anubhav, and reaches to the sublime destination of revelation, anubhut, what we call in Sanskrit from anubhav to anubhut. On this path, one finds some distinctive and representative knowledge system, the Vijnana, invisible under the wombs of Mother Earth, that is archaeology, Puratattva Vijnana, visuality of the image, iconography, Pratima Vijnana, inherent message of beauty, aesthetics, that is Saundarya Vijnana, and design and sculpturing, that is architecture, Astapatya Vijnana. The understanding, interpreting, experiencing, and exposing them with co-sharing would lead to make this world the global family. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, what in Mahopanishad we have that old discussion. So let us hope for the good through the truth in a beautiful way. Satyam Shivam Sundaram. With this few remarks, I am going to request Sikhaji, and again using the same metaphor Yatha namo tatha guna. Shikha means the longer tail. So in folk way we say that if man want to link from the divinity, you have to be a tail. Then only you can go from this world to other world. So two words I have to say. Don't compare, this is something like flattering or anything like, she is one of my mentors. The way that about 12 years ago, when I presented something, she had edited, modified, changed, and then that inspired me so much that first or second issue of the context, my paper published, and that's why my journey taken a turn. So in this way, I follow the tradition of Bhattacharyya, having 24 gurus. So Shikhaji is in a way my guru, that she has molded me in that way. And about her credentials, I think if you use Google or internet and you just put India UNESCO, that's all. Then you can see something, millions things coming up, our books or all that. So I think we all know that. Shikhaji is famous for a different, another very distinctive symbol that is called Drona. Don't confuse with Dronacharya, because many times people get it confused. But that full explanation is development and research organization for, here is emphasis, nature, arts and heritage. This is in a way the only organization which is linking these trial situation of nature and then trying to do practical things like conservation, reservation and so many things. But she is going to talk. So she is just like, if you can say in English word, she is the lady with the lamp, like Florence Nightingale for the heritage studies and planning. So I pray and request and namaste to Shikhaji again to please deliver your talk. Shikhaji.
Namaskar, everyone. Thank you, Professor Rana, for that very elaborate introduction. I'm really humbled with your introduction. I don't think at any point I can consider myself as your guru with your knowledge and resources, but it's really sweet of you to mention that. Of course, you mentioned about Drona. I just wanted to say that the word Drona was used for our organization because it is based in Gurgaon, which is Dronacharya's Gaon. And that's how we developed the acronym. And also because we wanted Drona to be, an educational resource, whatever we work, we do. So in that sense, carry the Guru Shishya Parampara in that sense. So before I begin my presentation, I would also like to thank Professor Joyce Sen and IIT Kharagpur for inviting me today to this very important session, and also, the Bharata-Tirtha, which is a very impressive initiative. I also want to congratulate him on, forming this Center for Indian Knowledge Systems, which is very important and something that universities in India should have thought of much before. So it's really, I would say, a benchmark initiative of IIT Kharagpur, and I wish them, full success and all the best in creating the knowledge resource that India needs today of these traditional knowledge systems. So my presentation, I'm going to share it now. It focuses on the Vastu Vidya, as already mentioned by Professor P.B. Rana. Let me just try sharing it. Is my screen visible to everyone?
Yeah, yes, it is visible. It is visible.
Yes,
Okay.
we can see you. Thank you.
So I will begin my presentation. I'm going to talk about interpreting the traditional texts which are, linked to Vastu or architecture in India, and also the aspect of conservation, which we call Jeernodhar. We have, of course, several texts, and it is a very complex matrix that we have to decipher and really understand, what our forefathers and what our previous ancestors have written, and how they created these interesting architectural forms and historic cities that are still surviving and that carry this message of sustainability, which we have yet to learn in our present urban design and architecture. My presentation is divided into 3 sections. The first is just an introduction. I wanted to emphasize on this concept of center that we have in the Indian knowledge systems that is used for designing. The second part is about Vastu Vidya and what kind of text we have available for interpretation. And lastly, on Jeernodhar or conservation, because that is my primary discipline, looking at historic sites and conserving these. So if we really look at, the concept of center and starting from, the very basic, which is our house or the traditional dwellings, which we can find across India in all states and villages and towns, we see that the evolution really started with, if you see on the left side, with an open space. And a sort of center was created by having small utilitarian spaces around, which could be for storage. It was in the agricultural, agrarian society that this came up. So you could have storage of grains. You could have one area where you would just keep, stuff for use like clothes and all, and another covered room, but largely the living was inside an open space, which we at times it's in local language it's also called a bara, or an open space that gets enclosed. And how this developed, when the form developed into a pakka house, you would find that the rooms get sort of concretized on the sides and take a shape, whereas you have a central chowk or courtyard, which becomes your main space of activity. And then it expands into a single court house or a double court house or a multi-court house. And across India, whether it's, in Rajasthan, the Havelis, or in other parts of North India, or it is the Vadas in Maharashtra, or, down south in Kerala, the houses all follow this open space housing, traditional dwelling system. And what is important here to realize is it's not, the covered areas that are important. These are just utility areas that expanded as per the use of the family. But your main house was really the courtyard or the open space where all activities, whether it's births, celebrations, marriages, or just the family getting together, or even, the religious rituals would be happening here. So that the center space, which is of course also called Brahmastan, was the most important. And that, even in multi-courtyard spaces, it would develop as, the center would be, the sacred center would be one, which would usually be inside in the innermost court of the zanana, and that would extend into the outer court for the men, or even for the work area and stables and other area is in bigger houses. So this is again, and how also in terms of etymology, how this sort of, the bara or the enclosure, then it also became like a triple opening, so a tibada and a chobada, and the whole evolution took place. And it can be applied across India, like I said. What is interesting is what I mentioned, that central space or the open space is really our house or dwelling unit, where all the primary activities and rituals take place, and the sides are basically supporting areas, the covered areas. And this is so much clear in the altar or Vedi or the ground plan, which is so important for us. So the ritual space, or where the Vedi is formed, is the central Brahmastan for any rituals of the houses. And if we study it in architecture, it is interesting to note that this is the court center is where the entire architectural form emanates from. And if you see all these traditional houses, you realize that it is this innermost courtyard which is most decorated, has the best, paintings or best stone carvings, because that is your house and that is the place of celebration. And even in construction, you move outwards. You first make this as the most celebrated space, and then you move outwards. And in my research, I found in a lot of houses where they could not finish the exterior, because they started moving from inside outwards, and this was not a priority. So this is actually understanding how in the Indian system we move from inside out, or the design emerges from the center outwards. And even in construction systems, if you talk to the traditional masons, whether it's the center of house that got demarcated first, or if it is a jali, then it is the center of jali space, or all your jharokas or openings, there would be a centric pattern that would be followed. It could be, these are two examples showing how the center shows, and you can actually, if you understand this concept, you can read traditional dwellings, just the elevations. Looking at that, you can say whether it's a two courtyard or a multi-courtyard dwelling, because it clearly shows on the facade also. The concept of center is so significant. This is again a sort of patterns showing how single family and fraternal clusters, where a number of brothers are living in a joint family, evolved using the center and the sub-centers. And this at the dwelling level was again, if you look at the spatial pattern at the cluster level, which could be a chokri, katra, or a mohalla in a historic settlement, you find that each spatial pattern for a mohalla would have its ritualistic center, which would be an important temple or a well in the area, which everybody would associate with and go to pray. And the political center or an influential noble's house or haveli that would be there. And often you have the mohalla also called after, the person. It could be like Kasli Walo Ka Mohalla or something, which would have that, people, number of dwelling units also associated with the same people, but then one important person who's there. And the same aspect you see even at the town level. Of course, it's most evident in the Tamil temple towns, where you see the temple at the center and the concentric development, which is very clear in this 7 Parakrama Srirangam temple, and most elaborate here. So my point here is just looking at the Indian knowledge system and the aspect that whether it is, our traditional craftsperson who designs jali, or it is, even the housewife or the women of the family who would be making the mandala or the rangoli pattern, or the construction worker marking the center of the house, the sthapati working on it, or the owner themselves who are actually using the house. The center of the house is what is most important, or the center of that space for detailing. So the design really evolves from the center. But I understand that today in our architecture colleges, and I'm also a product of that, we are actually using the Western approach. We are given, if you say, what you see on the left side, we are given a size area, and we feel that the courtyard is carved out of the area. Whereas if we look at it from the Indian knowledge systems approach, it's really the courtyard or the open space that is the house, and the area, the covered areas are just ancillary structures. And this is an aspect that I have emphasized a lot and also studied later in our contemporary houses, how we continue some of these indigenous systems. They are so ingrained in us that we continue to follow these traditions and rituals, even if it is, an apartment block today in, say, Gurgaon or Kolkata or any other place. We would still be following the rituals of Vastu Pujan in the center of the house, or the Greh Pravesh before we enter the space. So it's just that we are continuing certain rituals, but we've lost that whole aspect of designing, which I feel today, and with this, indigenous knowledge systems of India, we should actually start using them in designing, even for architecture. So moving to my next point on Vastu Vidya, which essentially I feel is, a design in response to the environment. I'm not really the first person saying that. Professor P.B. Rana has done a lot of research and also mentioned about that, how we traditionally associated with nature the mountains being the gods, whether this is Kanchenjunga, and of course Buddhist philosophy, but we have Mount Kailash, Meru, and so many associations. In a similar manner, water is sacred to us. So if we really translate, the Vastu Vidya, it's basically interpreting directions, topography, and natural elements to organize and to balance nature within, the dwelling space or the temple structure that we are creating. And this is basically a diagram showing how different directions are interpreted. So, the beginning, or we had Professor Joyson on the first day was explaining the etymological root of Purva, that how many meanings are there. It is also the beginning. And east is, if we really look at our traditional maps, anywhere in the Indian system, we find that the east was always shown on top. We started with that. And then we have, south on the right, west below, and north on the left. And then associations with, water in the northeast and mountains on the southwest. So even the topographical axis was based on this understanding on how a settlement would develop. So if we see like a traditional settlement, you would always have, of course, you have the religious center and the political center that I mentioned, but also how the topography was, aligned to that. So the highest point is topographically also the center, and that's where you would have the most important, buildings, whether it's temple or along with of course, the ruler's structure. But he would never make a fort or a city without first, consecrating it with a temple or a religious structure. And the entry point would have the water as a welcoming element. And this sort of shows the topography, which is very much visible in all our historic settlements. You can see how the skyline gets defined by the temple form, the shikhara, or the fortifications, clearly showing the hierarchy that is so important, which we sometimes miss today in our cities. And this aspect of Vastu is very evident in Jaipur city plan. Usually, it is mentioned that the city plan of Jaipur is, a direct application of Prastara. But if we really analyze, how the 9 grid was readjusted to the topography, how Savai Jai Singh understood, the hills, surrounding hills, and the cities, designed to respond to it, we realize that, the Ganesh temple on the north, the Shiv temple on the south hill, the Galta Ji and Sun temple on the east, how they defined the east, west, and north, south axis. And then the center was aligned to have Govind Dev Ji temple, which is the center of the entire plan here. So you can see the Govind Dev temple, the entire garden area, and the various sectors that come around it. So this is an example where we see that it is not just Vastu and understanding the grid that gets applied, but unless you have an understanding of the sacred geography of the space and how that whole plan is applied or adjusted to the environment and topography, is when you achieve the true sustainability or environmental balance that Vastu texts prescribe. And this basic comprehension of environment was then translated into harmonic grids. So we see various kinds of complex mandalas depending upon the typology, whether it is a temple, whether it is a house, a well. There are different ones for vapis and other typologies for forts. So that's how these further develop. But primarily, these are, it's a environmental balance and the positive and negative energies of the nature that one needs to understand. The placement of deities and the myth of the Purusha are representative of these religious associations. So it's not only important to understand the particular deity that is assigned to that direction, but the meaning of how that connects with our natural environment. And the biggest challenge we face today is we have several Vastu texts, from different periods, centuries, pertaining to different cultural contexts and typologies and geographies. And it's really important for us that before we start looking at practicing a particular text, we understand its location, its context, how it can be applied, and sift and understand the process that is more important. This is an example of an article where you can see 17 Vastu texts, but of course there are many more besides these. So you would see that from the 17th century BCE to 1915, there is a list of so many Vastu texts across India. So that's one challenge that we have to understand when we are looking at the knowledge systems, that which Vastu text needs to be understood in which particular context and what would be its application in the present situation. And I will be able to explain that to you with my last section, which is on Jeernodhar or conservation, because for a long time, we've been looking at Jeernodhar or regeneration, which is the Indian concept of conservation in architecture. And we were always looking at Shilpa Shastras or Vastu as the guiding text. But it's when I was working, on a UNESCO fact-finding mission for Tamil Nadu temples, where there was a concern that these temples are not being conserved properly, and probably they should refer to the traditional text, which is the Agama texts in case of Tamil Nadu area specifically. And these are both Shaivite and Vaishnavite Agama texts, but one needs to really refer to these texts because the temples, these historic temples, were created based on these texts. And that's when I realized that there is these had sthapatis involved, and the sthapatis were trained in the Mammalpuram temple, college temple of architecture. And it is the only probably college of architecture that teaches, temple architecture to sthapatis. A very interesting institution, and really produces very good sthapatis who have knowledge of Vastu. But yet what they are not taught and what is currently missing is the Jeernodhar aspect, because the Jeernodhar are chapters which come under the Agama. And while doing this conservation, this is one case I'm just showing you what was happening in the temples in South India, and even currently this is happening. This is the Meenakshi Amman temple, where the complete east and south corridor was removed, demolished, because they said that the stone is not in the right condition and it needs to be removed. And this is the new stone that was being used when we went for the UNESCO fact-finding mission inspection. This is the old stone columns and beams, which we saw, which were in good condition, had nice carving. So we questioned, why were they removed? And they thought that the stone is deteriorating. There was some condition assessment reports that they had, but not really complete. And you can see the comparison. This is the old, corridor in the west. You can see the kind of carving, the iconography that is, from the Chola and Nayak period here, the Vijayanagara period. And out here you can see the new column. You can see how, we've completely lost the carving quality. And if we look at the old columns, there was really no need to replace anything, which should just have been conserved using the same material. But this is because there was, half-baked knowledge of Vastu and Jeernodhar, and they felt that if it's an old structure, it needs to be replaced. And as a result of this, we inspected around 18 temples, and we had consultations with Agama experts. You can see on top one of the consultations, both Shaivite and Vaishnavite experts. And in fact, I asked them this question about Meenakshi Amman temple. I said, this is the situation. What does your Agama text say? And the Shaivite Agama expert, because Meenakshi Amman is a Shaivite temple, he explained, he said, he quoted in Sanskrit, a complete quote from the Agama Shastras. And he said that if what the Agama says, that if, your material is deteriorating, then you restore it, just mend it, repair it. And you repair it and you repair it till the material is dead. And once that material has died, you replace it with exactly the same material. or if it's required, a better material structurally. So if it is stone, you replace it with stone. If it is, metal, you replace it with metal. And which we realized is exactly what, the international charters of ICOMOS or UNESCO are saying today. So we have all this traditional knowledge system, which, we are not referring to. We sometimes don't understand how to interpret it. And yet it is something, which has lasted for centuries, and it is still relevant today. So that's when we realized that we need to actually look at the agamas and the Jeernodhara specifically, because today the Shilp Shastras are being followed for new temple construction. If a Sthapati is brought in to do conservation of a temple, he is not looking at the Jeernodhar, because those are, chapters which are lost in the agamas and not being referred to. But he's looking at the Shilp Shastras, so he knows what to construct new. He would probably add a new structure within the old one, and he would do it well. But then he is not really aware of how to do conservation, and the conservation is right now, half being done by conservation experts who are trained in the Western mode, or partly by the Sthapatis, but also not recognizing the true, tenets of Jeernodhar. So that's when we did this value assessment, and we said that one really, we have to realize these are living temples for the community. Agamas still define the rituals that they follow, there in Tamil Nadu. So the rituals are still being followed of, of all the how the rituals are performed in the temples, how the idol is worshipped, what are the festivals and celebrations being carried out, but how the repair and maintenance is being done, which is under the Jeernodharanam chapters, is something that the acharyas know, but the Sthapatis are not aware of it. So this communication between the acharyas and Sthapatis is very important. And finally, translating this into a manual that is applicable currently, which even the archaeologists, the conservation architects and engineers of today understand. So this is an exercise. We finally took up a research project, which is an ongoing research project between Cardiff University, Dr. Adam Hardy, who's a temple expert, Crispin Branford from SOAS, who's another temple expert on Tamil Nadu temples, SPA Bhopal, and Drona Foundation, with myself as the co-investigator, where we looked at, what are the various agamas. We are looking at, there is also Professor Kailash Rao from SPA Vijayawada, who's doing these LIDAR scans, so that we get to understand the scale and what was the agama or the shastra used to design it. Was the practical application, similar to the text or different? And of course, we have to use the same text that was used at that time in that particular century. And also, we are looking at the inscriptions that show that particular agamas were used for certain temples. So this is sort of a table showing, which agama has, what are the Jeernodharana chapters which are being referred to. Dr. Libby Mills in Toronto University, she's a Sanskrit expert who's also translated a number of these texts, who's also part of our team. And this is my last slide where, I'm showing you this Jeernodhar Dasaka, which is one of the important texts that we found. It's a 16th century text, but has the most elaborate points on conservation. And this was Mr. T. Ganeshan in the Institute of Pondicherry, French Institute of Pondicherry, who suggested this. And Dr. Libby Mills has translated this completely. And now we are using this, to formulate the conservation manual that I was mentioning, which would have some generic recommendations on what should be the process of conservation for the temples in Tamil Nadu. So this is just, the translation of the first beginning phrases, which says, when Jeernodhar is performed anew, the highest reward is attained. One should carefully protect that which is not worn, but one should certainly not hold on to that which is truly worn out. So it's clearly saying, what can be repaired and what you can let go. And, this kind of warning, which is important, he who out of confusion or ignorance removes that which is not worn out gets cooked in the terrible roar of hell for 30,000 eons. Therefore, the wise man should, with all care, protect that which is not worn. So it's really, a sort of an indication saying what we say in minimalist conservation, even in the Western, charters, that just, preserve what can be preserved because it is of great value. So this was my last slide, but just to explain to you the overall, concept of Jinodhara Vastu and the complexity we have in interpreting these texts, but also how important these are today for our practice and application. So it's not just studying the knowledge systems, but also understanding how they can be applied today in a meaningful manner. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you listen me?
Yeah, I can.
Hello.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. This was just like a journey. It started from Kautilya Sutra and all these agamas and Indian literature, and then coming close by to the applied aspect. So this is something like in a short, like it was like just like Gayatri Mantra, that how you are going to interpret and understand. So Shikaji has done wonderful job, and I hope that can be available in maybe CD form or other form that students or institution can use that. Thank you very much, Shikaji, for putting us in a manner that we are flying from ancient to modern with a wonderful vehicle run by you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, okay, now we can proceed to the second lecture by Professor Rajdhani Karra, who is Professor in Geography and Environmental Studies, California State University, US. He specialized in urban and economic geography, globalization, so many things, spatial analysis, and geography of tourism, South Asia, focusing on India. And she has credit of so many publications, of course, concentrating on South Asia and especially India. But from two sides, let me use the metaphor, the word. So we say that in a way, you can say she's also specialized in remote sensing, but she's also dealing with intimate sensing. And that is a wonderful link between. Myself is only doing intimate sensing. So that's good that I can listen even from the other side. And when you link the two sides, intimate and intimate sensing, remote sensing, then only you can have the real joy. And joy is here. So thank you very much. You are most welcome. Rajdhani ji, you have Delhi connection. And I hope you have been a student of R.B. Singh, I hope.
Yes.
So,
yes, I was a student, yes.
So, okay.
Don't ask me the year, that will make me super old.
Because he's my student in bachelor and master class both, and also my younger brother. So
yes, I came to know that. Yes, that's honorable.
So that's so good, and now he's the Secretary General of the World Geographical Union. So that all those old connection, and then recently he has been in one of our webinars, and the papers are in process from his Springer. So you are most welcome, and you are going to put the other side. So we have started from aesthetics, deeper values. Now you are going to talk about something what is visual, what problem we face, linguistic approach. Okay, most welcome.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Please.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Singh, for such a wonderful introduction and connecting the dots. And then intimate sensing, I still have to understand that, but that's okay. And I want to thank Professor Joy Sen. And if I am missing the names, I think it's Miss Ankihi, Anuradha, and Dr. Priyanka who are here. And thank you all for inviting me. And Shikha, it was wonderful listening to your talk. It really took me from Jaipur, Rajasthan. You were talking to Mahabalipuram and Mamalapuram. I have a great love for South. And today we have a person from Chennai, who becomes a vice president here. So it's really an overwhelming day for me too. So yeah, Kamala Harris, right? So I just wanted to touch her on a little bit too. Okay, so I want to congratulate IIT Kharagpur and others, to bringing this Bharata-Tirtha, specifically bringing the Center of Knowledge, because I think it really goes so very well with the new education policy of 2020, right? So I was looking at that and I say, yes, IIT engineers just don't need to understand, just the sciences, but also, the socio-economic environment too, and to connect with that. So I think it really changed when I was in grade, 12th grade, and how we used to think about IIT, only the boys used to go, and how it has become, gender friendly, and, the girls become doctors and the boys become the engineers, right? So again, the north-south divide. But anyways, so it's really wonderful to, see how IIT has evolved in a very different sense, specifically with this seminar. I have all your YouTubes. I am sorry I was not able to attend live, but I'm pretty, if I get little sleepy, it's 2 a.m. and I didn't sleep all day. So I should be okay. I think so. I had 2 coffees. Okay, so no, that's fine. Okay, I'm going to take you today. Where is it? Okay, here it. Okay. Okay, I want to take you all today with me to, to understand, which you already know a part of it, Linguistic Diversity of India, a Geographical Analysis. I have published few papers on different aspects of diversity of India. And, if you're interested, I'll be happy to send those papers to you too. Now, a very interesting thing, I was looking at the National Education Policy of India 2020, and what just Shikha just told, interpreting the text, right? So real comes the language, and if you see here, and I'll send you a nice little Kahoot game if you guys have any time, now or later. If there are 7 questions which ask you, even in this, I think in the presentation panel, we all speak different languages, right? I think we speak Hindi, we speak different dialects of Hindi and accents of Hindi, and I think we speak Bengali as well, right? So there might be other languages too, but I'm just guessing with the last names and everything that, what 3 major languages are here. So yeah, I'm very excited to be talking about. So I'm going to talk about, what I just want to bring Shikha again here, because she talked about the sacred geography and what Rana P.B. Singh has also worked on it a lot. I want to bring the linguistic geography, to try to understand. I'm not going to go to the linguistic language as such, but I want you guys to understand, I just want to give you a spatial perspective of languages, how languages move, and are they how do they make a region more diverse? Okay, so let's go. We all talk about India as a land of unity and diversity, various languages, custom, and it indeed is a hallmark of cultural diversity. So whenever I meet anyone, we all know at least 3 languages, right? English, Hindi, and our regional language. So my mother tongue is, I think it's Hindi because I was raised in New Delhi, India. But my mother was from Punjab, right? And my father came from undivided India. So sometimes I think I can, mix and different types of languages. But I still think Hindi is my mother tongue, and English, and, a Punjabi maybe a little bit. But I don't know how to write and read, and I can speak broken Punjabi, not very good, right? So at least all of us here in South Asia, overall in India, we all speak at least 3 languages, right? So that's a very good way to interact. When we go from north to south, we speak English, or we mix Hindi and English. And interestingly, so this is a map which just shows us how we are diverse in terms of different languages. And I'll come back to that. The dialects of Hindi, northern part more Hindi dominated, coming down to the Dravidian languages, Telugu, Kannada, Tamil, and so on and so forth. Different, but Indo-European languages is the dominant one in the northern part of South Asia, specifically with. So languages have a spatial journey, and they move with us. If I migrate to a certain region, I bring that language with me. And I want to mention here, just a small deviation from just a little example here. This International Education Week is being celebrated all around the world, if you all know, in the 3rd week of November, 15th November onwards. And, they asked me, can you make a small slideshow on Hindi? What's your mother tongue? So I was just thinking, that we're trying to bring different languages across the regions. So coming to the national education policy, there's another interesting link which they're trying to connect bharatvani.in towards, to create a digital platform and have all languages electronically, to where I can go and get all the resources. So this is a map which talks about which language is dominant, and this is a earlier map which shows you, it doesn't show you the new states, but I want to show you a few more. So English, Hindi, regional language, this is our 3-language formula in India. My research question was, what is the linguistic spatial pattern of India, and has the patterns of linguistic diversity changed between 71 and 2001? And does language have a neighboring effect, and does relative distance and direction really matter when we start thinking of languages? How do languages spread? So, okay. So you all know that, we have scheduled languages and non-scheduled languages. Scheduled languages is a part of the Indian constitution, and they all have increased. And I know Shikha has already worked on UNESCO, but UNESCO has February 20th as a mother tongue celebration day of all around the world. And they have listed many of our even scheduled languages like Manipuri and Bodo as an endangered languages, right? So how languages really play an economic, social, it has a component of what language becomes a social language, so that it also creates several economic opportunities. And if we look at the new education policy that of 2020 came in September, it talks about let's teach all the students till 5th year, I think grade 5, in regional languages. But it is really done or not, that's a whole different criteria, because we have all these private schools and whatnot. But I hope it's really brought in this particular the government school, but they still have time till 2040 to implement all that. Anyways, so eighth, as I already talked about this, so these are our 22 scheduled languages, and they all have increased in time. Earlier we just had 14, and then the different amendments, you had the rise of Sindhi, Konkani, Manipuri, Nepali, Maithili, Bodo, Dogri, and Santali, right? So you do see changes coming, and the number of languages have increased. This is this terminology. I'm going to skip this, and I'll be happy to share the slides with you guys. What is an official language, what's a national language, and what's a regional language used for communication among people living in a particular area. Okay, now reviewing the literature, it's not just India, which is pretty diverse in terms of languages. There has been a lot of research being done, maybe in even in African region too. They try to understand the linguistically diverse region. Are they kind of connected to low level of economic development, low mobility, or is there an inverse relationship between linguistic homogeneity and level of economic development and literacy? If we have high linguistic homogeneity, do we have we have low level of economic development and literacy? So he demarcated the world on the basis of high and low linguistic, and he talks about how diversity runs through West Africa and Central Africa, and the other covers South and Southeast Asia. Fishman talks about linguistically heterogeneous countries are found to have a high death rate, high infant mortality. So they both give us two different perspectives, lower government revenues, and so on and so forth. Dutt and Noble talks about, every language has a core. Core regions are where people use mother tongue. Hindi language has a core and a sphere of influence, which we see from, I'm going to show you in a map in a second, and how India's linguistic diversity is high at the national level, but at the district level, few districts only has high diversity. And even in this research, which I have taken states as a scale, but if I did the same study at the district level, my whole story would be very different. And when we are sitting outside, we always talk, hey, India is very linguistically diverse. But we are diverse, but we are diverse at the national level. Coming to the state level, we are not diverse. So it's a very symbol when we talk about, very diverse, 84% Hindus and the rest Muslims and the other Sikhs and population. Religiously, we are diverse. But it's very interesting to see what's the scale. Right. So obviously, talking about India, we are pretty diverse, second largest in terms of population, which we are going to cross. I'm not going to go into the depth looking at the time of the methodology, but I use a diversity index for calculating the linguistic diversity of 1971. I did in 91 too, but I didn't bring that one. And 2001. I still have to bring in the new national education policy, its impact in terms of languages, as well as the 2011 linguistic data. And second is the index of dissimilarity, which has helped me understand which languages are, concentrated to the core and which have spread. So I have a taxonomy of languages, which I'm going to show you in a bit. And then the index of diversity closer to 1 is high, and closer to -1 is less diversity. Okay, this is how the languages, how get impacted with time, historically, urbanization in cities. What do we speak? As you all know, with the outsourcing, people have started speaking English with the accent neutralization classes. It wasn't there 20 years back or so when even we were in the college, but now you have accent neutralization. Speak like an Australian, speak like English like a Brit or an American. So anyways, coming back to the social, political, and so on and so forth. And let me show you the taxonomy of the map, which I created with the index of dissimilarity. Yeah, this is the one actually. If you look here, this was created by using the index of dissimilarity and the data for the year 2001. So you can look here, the national dispersion. Hindi and Urdu have a national spread from the northern part as well as in the southern part of the Hyderabad region. You're going to see that in a minute. Bengali, Marathi, and Tamil has a regional dispersion. Okay, and Gujarati, Oriya, Punjabi, Telugu, Malayalam, and Kannada are spread out, but more concentrated in the core of the region, right? Gujarati more in Gujarat. But I'm not comparing it with that's my next project, how languages, Indian languages have spread out here in North America as well, because we have a lot of Gujarati community and we have a lot of Punjabi community. And when I speak to Gujarati, not many Gujarati speaks Hindi, they just so it's kind of again a barrier. Here I see different groups, Telugu group, what's this, Kannada group, more breakup of languages and people cross the border. So which is very interesting to understand that one too. A core limited to the core were Assamese, Kashmiri, Manipuri, and Konkani, spread but with no core. So Nepali is in Nepal, but it's again our scheduled language of the Indian constitution. So it doesn't have a core in India, right? But same is with Sindhi from Sindh here in Pakistan. Okay. And others were my non-scheduled languages. Okay. So that I considered them as others. Okay. So I'm going to show you a map, I guess. So this was what has come up, and this was, I got from HT. And, again, what I was saying, about Hindi, it's national dispersion. And you can see all others languages. Look at the spread. And let me show you this link. And please do let me know if you are able to see this link. Okay. Because can everybody see this link? Yes, no?
Yes, we can. Yes.
No? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Joy. Okay, so if you look here, I just want to show you, I'm just going to show you this maps. That's it. These are the latest one with 2011 census, which I didn't have it as per now. So, if you look at Hindi, it's 52.83 crores, right? You can see the spread, what I already took my analysis for the 2001 data. And if you look at Bengali, again, you can see the spread, the second largest language spoken in India, followed by Marathi, right? And if I show you Urdu, yeah, that's what I was saying. Urdu and Hindi are kind of spread all around the region. And if I look at Punjabi, it's more concentrated in Punjab, right? And if I go back to our Bengali, Bengali is more in the, obviously in West Bengal and nearby regions, right? And obviously, we're bringing in Bangladesh here, but that's another one. So we have Hindi, the highest, followed by Bengali, Marathi. But, all these gives us an idea how the languages have been spread, right? So anyways, I just wanted to share this. Okay, where did it go? Okay, I just wanted to share my, okay, where did it go? Okay, yeah, so anyways, this is the linguistic diversity of India map. If you can look here, 71 and 91. Where do we see more diversity? This is 1971 map. Obviously, we just had 14 languages, and here the language number increased. We see more diversity here. Probably, if you look around in the southern parts of the region, the basic region we're going to talk about in Maharashtra, here in Goa, because of the high diversity. So there's a lot of discussion being done. What really pushes high linguistic diversity, specifically in the capital. I remember I said this is my state level data. Is that? Yeah, if this has been, so we see a problem here too. I want to talk about that problem too. It's called MOP, Modifiable Areal Unit Problem, right? Where I say, all languages in Karnataka has the highest linguistic. We're not talking about Karnataka. Karnataka only Bangalore, right? So that's one major city. You can't compare, like, okay, maybe a little bit of Bengaluru or Mysore, but not all Bangalore is linguistically diverse, right? So that's one major thing which we need to understand. And another factor which has come into the picture is, please let me know when the time is up, or, put it in the chat. The migration is driven by inequality. If you look at the data, where are the languages where are the people gonna go? They're moving from poorer northern states, which speaks Hindi, right? And they're going to rich southern and western states. There was recently an article actually which came and which talked about, can we make we are talking of Hindi, English as a lingua franca, but another research came was that I think Hindi is also capable of becoming the lingua franca, apart from having the issues with the southern states, and I'll show you why. And look at the migration, driven by obviously inequality. People are going to Delhi, Tamil Nadu, Goa, Kerala, Gujarat, Karnataka, and Maharashtra. And I think I have another map. Okay, I'll come back to this in a minute. Oops, yeah, where's that one? Yes, that's the one I wanted to talk about, was that Hindi is rising in southern state. Can it be a lingua franca, right? And if you look at, because where do people migrate? And they say, in Kerala and Tamil Nadu, people speak, people from other regions have come to these states, right? So they say that this percent of population with Hindi as a mother tongue. So it's kind of very interesting, percent increase in population between Hindi as mother tongue between 2001 and 11, right? So I haven't done research on this particular graph, but it was really interesting to see the research which is coming out new, in the sense of how Hindi is becoming popular in southern states. And it's a one thing which I think more research needs to be done on this. So anyways, why some languages become popular? Obviously, by social dominance, as Shika already talked about Sanskrit, right? Sanskrit in Asian India, English due to colonial rule, use of language in the marketplace, the language which we speak. Do we speak in, when I go out and do shopping, what language do I speak? I don't go out and speak Hindi here, right? But when I go to Little India, or if I go to some other Asian Indian store, I might say, oh, I want dal makhani or whatnot, right? But when I go down to Chennai, they don't understand Hindi. Most of them, they don't understand Tamil, and I know chinna Tamil. I know very little Tamil. So then I mix Hindi and English, and that's because of the Bollywood effect. You see high linguistic diversity in Mumbai region, you see a high linguistic diversity in Bangalore, right? And only in the cosmopolitan cities, even in little bit in Kolkata, right? So it's kind of very interesting to see, and Delhi, obviously. So you might use Punjabi or Bengali at home, English in the office, and but one tends to use the Hindi language, right? So it's very interesting to see what language are we using and how does it play an important role. Now, coming back to the geographical reasons when we say why Hindi and Urdu are, spreading in the neighboring regions, and it has a major concentration all around the country, and why some are just concentrated. Distance decay really impacts the proportion of speakers of a language, and it start declining as we move away from the core. And we have the first law of geography, which talks about that everything is related to everything else, but near things are more related than the distance thing. So I already showed you this map, and then there's a lot of interesting thing which talks about that Delhi really lags behind other metros in diversity. I was super surprised. And remember one thing, all the neighboring regions of Delhi are all Hindi speakers, right? So if I have to go out for a job, I think I'm going to go to Delhi, right? Because that's the most cosmopolitan, the capital city, rather than me going to Chennai. Okay, so that was another, and one more thing about Hindi is, we just talk about Hindi, but if you look at other regions, if you look at all these different varieties accounting for Hindi's dialect, if you see here in Jharkhand, Chandigarh, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, they all speak Hindi but with a different dialect, right? So anyway, they were talking about how, again, an example of Gujarat, larger cities shows a marked increase in Hindi as a mother tongue. Again, people are migrating, right? Who are migrating? From Hindi speaking states. Okay. Now, conclusion, I'm just going to stop here in a minute, that there's a change, but not a radical from the period 71, 91, and 2000. A new taxonomy of the language, which I showed you in a tabular form, which was used, which was created by the index of dissimilarity. This has a new taxonomy of the language on the basis of spatial dispersion. Okay, there is an association amongst all Indian languages, indeed, but Dravidian language, the southern languages, are more associated among each other as compared to the Indo-Aryan language in the northern part. Bollywood had played a very important role when we look in the detailed case study of index of diversity in 71, 91, and 2001, actually, because people around now it has increased more, right? And same is with the vice versa. We have Bollywood films and Tollywood films made in several languages. If you look at the example of Bahubali and others too, which I just thought about that. Epitome of unity, not just in India, but all around the world. If I talk to some people here in Middle Eastern region and Mexico, Mexican Latinos, people love, they say, oh, we love Bollywood films, right? So Hindi is pretty, popular outside the region as well. So distance decay indeed plays an important role of a language, start declining as one moves away from the core. Heterogeneity of languages at macro scale, but originally we are very homogeneous. That's the interesting part. And indeed, urbanization and globalization are playing a key role in increasing the linguistic diversity with different softwares, Bharatwani, which has just come, and the role of, the national education policy. I'm very sure it's going to play a very positive role. With that, I would say geographer can really help in shaping, defining the linguistic geography of India, which will definitely help the policymakers. And I'm really glad the NEP, the New Educational Policy 2020, has brought in the languages, more diversity to understand our culture. With that, everybody, shukriya. Namaste.
Okay, thank you very much for giving us again this different type of journey, linking different parts of India to our cultural symbol of language. So thank you very much for that. The last remark you said, geography people can do something. So there is a very popular saying about geography by Alan Wilson, a man from theoretical physics at Bristol, and somehow he was kicked from physics, then he got shelter in geography, and then he became professor of urban geography. What he said long back, this is a 80s story. Geography is what geographers can do. So geography is everywhere. It's just like among the vegetables, potato, you can put anywhere, you can cook, and then you can have something good. So that is that to be taken in a good manner, that in spite of all the diversity, what you very rightly tried to say, there are so many channels that are going to be linked. It starts from Bollywood from the ancient root, what Shikhaji has already said about the Sanskrit. And that we have to create in a way that we can say, here is an Indian knowledge system. It is nothing like any approach.
Yeah.
It is so basic essence, ethereal breathe, prana, shakti of India. So that is the second aspect you have tried to do. So now we have very less time for discussion, but I think Jai Dada, could you allow some questions or what?
Yes, thank you so much, sir, and thank you for the two wonderful presentation. One was the landscape variation, the other was the language variation, and I think somehow they are related to a certain extent. So I think we have two or three questions. I'll request Priyanka and Aki, Dr. De.
Okay.
Yeah. So please ask the questions. I think there are two or three questions which are evident, and I think after answering that, we can close this session. Yeah. And the other questions which are coming on the YouTube channel, a lot of them, they'll be all collated, assimilated, and sent back to the speakers and also to the chairperson for posterity, for future discussion.
Okay, good afternoon. The first question is directed towards Dr. Jain. Could you speak a little bit about, in your opinion, the interrelationship between Nabhi?
Professor Joyson, we can't hear.
Hello?
It's not very clear. It's not very clear.
Hello, am I
Could we have
audible?
it? Not very clear. Could you please say it a bit loud? Thank you.
Am I audible? Oh. The first question is directed towards Dr. Jain. Could you speak a little about the interrelationship between Nabhi, or the concept of nave, with Brahmasthana? If you could kindly elaborate on that.
I'm not sure if I can really elaborate much on that, but definitely, when I started with the center, or the point of emergence which is there, and both you mentioned Nabhi and the Brahmasthana, which is the center point and the emergence of any form that evolves. And that's something also in the Vastu Purusha, when you have the Purusha form itself, and when one is, marking that center, it is sort of pinning down that Purusha and, having that energy right there for your dwelling or for your construction that you're doing. So that is the point, the center, Nabhi, or which is the center of the Brahmasthana, or the open area that comes there. So it's essentially the center point and the energy that is all channelized in that point. From the surroundings. I'm not sure if it responds what you were specifically asking about, but I'm, more focused on how it is understood or interpreted in the construction of a temple or a house form itself. Yes. So again, if you see the temple form, and if you compare, how the Vastu Purusha and the form of the temple, they are superimposed, then you would find that point right there at where the deity is placed.
Thank you, ma'am, for your response.
Just let me add that if you see the Western literature, especially Asian, ancient Asian, it may be Korean, it may be Japanese and Chinese, and then you compare the aspect what Sikhaji has said. Simple concept is what we call axis mundi, following a Marcia Iliade concept. But she has tried to say that is based on the Indian context. But that Indian context has a very strong link with all the Asian culture. And recently we have found first century link with Korea and India. We are writing on that one. So that is one of the very basic principles we started. That is a body symbolism, archetypal representation of the body through the house. So naturally we have this, just like our naval code, axis mundi in architectural frame, you can say center point. What she has already shown 2-3 designs, that how is the entry point coming from the east, so light coming from the east, that is sun relationship, and then coming at the center like a body. And another sketch she has very rightly shown that how this was the Purusha. The whole thing is that is based on that archetypal representation of human body with the house. And that was one of the greatest contributions that Sikaji has elaborated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for wonderfully concluding what ma'am was trying to say. The next question is directed towards Dr. Kalra. If you could talk a little about if there is a correlation between language dispersion and how you were talking about language dispersion and population mobility. Do you think there is a correlation between the dispersion of climate responsive design? Because every region has a specific vernacular or climate specific design aspects. Do you feel that there could be a correlation between how the languages move and how this sort of architecture moves in the nation? Ma'am, could you kindly unmute yourself?
Okay, thank you. So I just was wondering, you asked me the question of how languages disperse with the climate, or I just missed it, or is it vernacular design?
Vernacular design, ma'am. Yes, vernacular architectural design. Yes.
Yeah, so I think I haven't gone into the depth of, I'm not a linguistic in the sense of studying the languages in detail. I'm a geographer who overall studied the spread and dispersion and trying to make connection whether it relates to the income or the migration, but not as such. But I think it's a very good point to look into, how the history really goes with the dispersion of the languages. So thank you for that question. Appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I think Joyda.
Yes, thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
So it's really a pleasure and an honor to have all three of you again in one forum. And as it was told by Shikha, Dr. Jain, is that IIT is now blessed to be having a center of excellence on Indian knowledge systems. And that center does not just mean physical space or a few conference rooms and a library and an archive, but it also means a galaxy and a gathering of people, people and experts like you, sir, like all three of you and others from other domains, to actually churn a dialogue over time, create the right repository, and also look out for opportunities under the ambit of the new National Educational Policy 2020, and also reach the young minds and the students. How do we plan out various things? So for that, sir, we need your kind presence and guidance from time to time. And webinars like this has opened up a new opportunity and vista to set up dialogues almost on a fortnightly or a monthly basis. And I think we can really go official, and we can create an official archive. This center, though it's stationed in IIT Kharagpur, but it's a center which belongs to Bharat-Barsha. It is going to be perhaps a Nabhi or a Brahmasthana of Indian knowledge systems to begin with, and of course there'll be other navis and other naves in other places. And so I think with this great hope, we look forward, we want to live forward. And thank you so much, sir. Pranam, sir. And thanks to Shikhaji and also Dr. Kalra, for coming all the way. You can see our one of our coordinators, Dr. Anuradha Chaudhary. She handles the history of ancient Indian science and technology. And I think you saw Professor Shomesh Kumar. He's a Dean of Student Affairs, sitting on the right. And he takes care of the mind and the soul and the physic of the entire students fraternity of IIT Kharagpur. So with these humble words, sir, kindly allow us to leave this session, and you can continue and be a part, and I think you may or you should continue and be a part of the final session, which is a panel discussion which involves three of the most eminent experts that we have in this country, Professor Anil Dhotre, Chairman AICT, Professor Amitabh Ghosh, a very renowned scientist, one of the doyens of mechanics and studies of inertia, former director IIT Kharagpur, and Professor Shishir Kumar Dubey, also another eminent scientist on climatic science, atmospheric science, and he is also one of the well-wishers. In fact, the little book, the first book which I wrote almost more than a decade back, was actually introduced by him, and it was put to media by him only. So he had sown the seed, which has probably just become a small bonsai. Maybe one day it will become a tree. Maybe next life, with your blessings, sir. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much. Pranam. Namaskar, sir. Professor Sahastra is here. Namaskar, sir. Thank you so much. Namaskar, sir. Professor Rana P.V. Singh ji is here. So it's really a pleasure to have both of you on the same forum. Professor Amitabh Ghosh is here, and Professor Dubey just called me. He should be joining any moment.
I think he has joined already.
Yeah, so we'll request Professor Dubey to also. So requesting Professor Dubey to put on the video, and
yeah, is it on now?
Not yet, sir.
Not yet, sir. So the video
It's
button.
not responding.
And I'll also request.
Okay, now
Yes,
I think
sir.
it's on.
Sir, namaskar.
Now
sir.
it is on.
Namaskar, sir.
Namaskar.
So good to see you. And we are also very honored that our director, Professor Virendra Tewari, is also here in this auditorium. So I'll request Professor Tewari to kindly come on stage and join us. And, yeah.
Namaskar, Professor Sahasbuddhe.
Namaskar ji, namaskar.
So, sir, as you all know, this is a wonderful moment. I think a lot of good work has gone into the domain of Indian knowledge systems, and a lot of isolated, connected and interconnected work has been happening. Professor Amitabh Ghosh, almost 2 decades back, had garnered and fostered some of the initial works that happened in IIT Kharagpur. I was a part of the process. I need not be personal at this moment. And as I just talked about Professor Dubey, who had helped us in taking forward some of the work, and a lot of great work and thought processes are happening across the nation under the leadership of Professor Anil Sahastra. And we have a wonderful leadership at IIT Kharagpur right now under the guidance of Professor V.K. Tewari, our esteemed director, IIT Kharagpur. So sir is here. Namaskar, sir. And so the great news of the day, the great moment of the time is that the Ministry of Education, by looking at the work, the progress, some level of seriousness has announced, the Hon'ble Minister, the Hon'ble Shiksha Mantri has announced the setting up of the Center of Excellence for Indian Knowledge System at IIT Kharagpur. And this is straight from the home page of IIT Kharagpur's website, which has been uploaded this morning. And there are news all over the country, within the nation and across. It has even reached Professor Kalra at California, who is a part of the webinar today. So I think this really sets the mood. It really sets the foundation, and it really calls for the future in the making, that what exactly is this center? I mean, how this center should march ahead, and when at what different stages we work out the phase 1 activities, the phase 2 activities, and the future activities of this center. In fact, if there are 3 phases, then what exactly are the constituent principles, the working guidelines, and the action plans of this center? So I think we really have a strong agenda right now. But before we go further, I'll request our Professor Shomesh Kumar to kindly come out and read a bio sketch of the three esteemed participants, speakers, and experts who are here to grace this occasion and almost set a blessed stone, a foundation stone, philosophically, strategically, and also through their blessings for this center of excellence. Professor Kumar.
A very good afternoon to all of you. With us we have very esteemed panel. First of all, I would welcome our director, Professor V.K. Tewari, who conceived the idea for this program on Indian knowledge systems, and I think this is very pertinent in the view that we are going to have the new education policy, and in the line of that, to give an emphasis on Indian knowledge systems and a continuation to the modern times. So we had very distinguished speakers in the last 3 days, and now this is the culmination of that, and for that again we have a very distinguished panel. Let me just say a few words about the panelists. Our first panelist is Professor Anil Sahastra. He is presently the chairman of All India Council of Technical Education. Professor Sahastra, he studied his bachelor's degree in mechanical, and he was a gold medalist. He studied from BVB College of Engineering and Technology, Hubli, under Karnataka University. Subsequently, he obtained his master's and PhD degree from the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. He worked at IIT Guwahati for about 11 years, and then he joined College of Engineering, Pune. He was also the director of the College of Engineering, Pune from 2005 to 2015. Subsequently, he has been the chairman of AICT and guiding the entire gamut of engineering and technical education in the country. Professor Sahastra has been recipient of several awards. He has received Maha Entrepreneur Award 2011. He received Edupreneur Award 2013. He received Jeevan Gaurav Puraskar. He received Mahatma Gandhi Leadership Award. He is a fellow of Institution of Engineers and is a fellow of Institution of Engineering and Technology. He is a fellow of National Academy of Engineering. Our second esteemed panelist is Professor Amitabh Ghosh. Professor Amitabh Ghosh completed his bachelor's degree and master's degree from IEST presently. Earlier it was called Bengal Engineering College in 1962 and 1964 respectively. He received 3 Calcutta University gold medals for standing first class first with record marks and standing first among the students of all branches of engineering of the university in both the examinations. He joined the college as a lecturer in May 1965 and continued his doctoral research, getting a PhD degree from Calcutta University in 1969. Professor Ghosh joined IIT Kanpur in 1971 as an assistant professor in the Department of Mechanical Engineering, where subsequently he became a professor in 1975. During 1977 and 78, he visited Technical University Aachen, Germany, as a Alexander von Humboldt fellow. Subsequently, he visited the university many times. Professor Ghosh was director of IIT Kharagpur from 1997 to 2002, and after that he returned to his professor position at IIT Kanpur. He retired from there in 2006. However, he continues to serve the academic community as a senior scientist of INSA, as well as a Platinum Jubilee Senior Scientist of National Academy of Sciences. He is honorary scientist of INSA, and he has been associated with IEST Shivpur as an honorary distinguished professor in the Aerospace Engineering and Applied Mechanics Department. His primary areas of research and teaching have been manufacturing science, machine dynamics, robotics, and basic mechanics. Apart from making original contributions with a very large number of research papers, he has also written 9 textbooks which are hugely popular in the academic community. He is credited with developing inertial induction based upon an extension of Mach's principle that has led to many exciting results in the celestial mechanics and cosmology. He is the first to predict the existence of a secular retardation of Mars, and he estimated its magnitude. We welcome Professor Ghosh to this panel. Our next distinguished guest is Professor Shishir Kumar Dubey, another former director of IIT Kharagpur. Professor Dubey received his primary and higher education in Varanasi. Subsequently, he completed his PhD degree in mathematics in the spatial area of fluid mechanics from Lucknow University in 1972. Professor Dubey worked at the Indian Meteorological Department from 1970 to 78, and he joined the Center for Atmospheric Sciences, IIT Delhi. He was, as a professor, he was head of the center from 1995 to 1998. He was Dean of Industrial Research and Development Center at IIT Delhi from 2001 to 2002, and he was director of IIT Kharagpur from 2002 to 2007. After relinquishing his post of director of IIT Kharagpur, Professor Dubey has been academically very active. He has been associated with KIT University, Bhubaneswar as a pro-chancellor, and some other universities of the country. Professor Dubey is well known for his work on the numerical storm surge prediction, ocean wave modeling, and coastal marine hazards. He has published more than 200 research papers in various international journals. He has co-authored a book on storm surges. He is internationally recognized for his pioneering contributions in the field of storm surge prediction. In fact, nowadays, whatever we hear whenever there is a cyclone or super cyclone, so many of his techniques are used there, and we hear 24/7 the prediction that this will be the surge of the storm and many kind of things. So Professor Dubey has made pioneering contribution in that area. He has received several awards and honors, including National Award in Atmospheric Science and Technology by the Ministry of Earth Sciences, Govt of India in 2009. We welcome you, sir, for this panel discussion.
So, sir, it's our pleasant duty to float a few questions. These are not questions, we are seeking guidance from you. So we'll begin with Professor Anil Sahastra, sir. So the question to you, sir, since we are going to have this Center of Excellence on Indian Knowledge Systems, so what do you think are the starting principles of this center? I mean, what are the checkpoints or the boundary conditions of this center? I mean, what should be the role of the center at the local level at the institute, or I mean, how it should network with other institutes at the national level and even go beyond? I mean, this is a simple question which I am framing to you, but sir, you are free to answer your way based on your vast experience in administration and national policy making. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting on this panel discussion. In fact, I will recollect the meeting which was held in the Ministry of HRD then, now Ministry of Education, on 18th of March, when a lot of scientists who have been working in Indian knowledge systems of the past era, they were all invited. Some of them came physically and some of them joined on a webinar basis, on the online platform. And the meeting lasted for about 5 hours. Normally in the ministry, some meetings are held at around 2 o'clock. We all assume that there will be a cup of tea at about 4, 5 o'clock and we'll all vanish. But it went on up to 8 o'clock. The minister himself, Ramesh, Pokhriyal ji, was throughout sitting there. And one of the items which was discussed was, how do we take this forward? Because there are a lot of attempts at different institutions at small, minute level. They are all microscopic. How do we make it macroscopic? That was the agenda, and I'm very happy that 3 days back when the minister came for the inauguration of this particular program, he announced the Center for Excellence in Indian Knowledge Systems. So it is a win-win situation. There are institutions who have been doing work and they are being appreciated. And I'm aware Professor Amitabh Ghosh, long ago, 2 decades ago, thought of this, but it never took off later. So I think finally the ministry has risen to the occasion, and this Indian Knowledge Systems division is already established in ministry, and it is operated from AICT. See, remember March 18 was the first day when it was announced that we should do something like this. The minutes of the meeting circulated. It took about a month's time, and after that, AICT was given the responsibility of even funding this division as well as creating posts and then recruit them. So in a matter of just 4 months, we not only conceptualized the idea, it was approved by the ministry, then subsequently in the AICT's council, we approved that. 5 posts were created, we advertised, conducted the interview, and 2 people out of 5 who are selected have already joined. Shri A.B. Shukla is a very well-known veteran. He himself was a retired IAS officer, very knowledgeable in Sanskrit. He has already joined in AICT about 15 days back. So I think there is a lot of progress which has been made on this front. So few key things which were discussed on that day and then minuted, and that became the starting point of the Indian Knowledge Systems division in MHRD. I would like to reiterate so that what is the role of a center of excellence being created in an IIT will become very clear. Number one, these are all attempts made by different people at different locations. And first we need to create a database of all the people who have been working, who have worked in the past and who are interested in working. I think that is the first starting point, and IKS.aict-india.org website was created the same little bit after the decision was taken that such a division should continue to begin to happen in MHRD. And we already have about database of 300 people from all IITs, ISERs, some of the central universities, state universities, and some freelancers who have been associated, including Sanskrit universities. I think this 300 database is a starting point. It's a nucleus. And once we have this minimum threshold value of 300 people, I think it's a large group who can start coordinating with each other, meeting with each other, understanding in which core areas they have interest and how each one of them can take advantage of each other's works and then move forward. I think that is the first thing. There are institutions, universities as well as NGOs who have been also working in ancient Indian knowledge systems. You need to take them also on board. That part of the work is already started. So IIT Kharagpur, obviously being a center of excellence, will have a big role to play in order to continue to not only see what is there in the ancient texts, translate that into the understandable language. So unfortunately, we somehow missed the bus, and teaching of Sanskrit, which was there up to 1800, post our colonial rule and Mackay system, we have lost touch with Sanskrit in most of the states of the country. There are in pockets somewhere here and there it is being taught. So how do we also start teaching Sanskrit in normal universities as well as IITs, NITs, ISERs? I think this is a very important thing. If you want to read the original text and understand that, Sanskrit learning is very important. So this Center of Excellence should open up a course in Sanskrit, very simple way. If you start with very heavy grammar, I think people will run away. So I think we should make it as simple as possible. And I'm aware of one Chamu Krishna Shastri who started conversation in Sanskrit way back when I was studying in IIT Bangalore. The first course on spoken Sanskrit was started. And we understand Sanskrit because it's so simple. Some of us who listen to Sanskrit news on the Doordarshan and All India Radio, we are very easily able to make out many of the things. But if a formal education is made, I think surely we will start understanding more, and those who are interested will take off from there. So that is the second area which is important. Then all the literature that is available in different forms in terms of what we call granthas, whether it is the Rasayana Shastra, Ayurveda, Ganita Shastra, all of the Artha Shastra, those literatures which are scattered all around, if we can bring in one place, it may be called as a library, fine. Otherwise, by scanning it and putting it in the PDF format, accessible to anyone, anywhere, there is already National Digital Library existing in IIT Kharagpur itself. So we can expand that database of literature. Once you have Sanskrit teaching learning, once you have the database of people who are interested in working in that field, once you have the literature available, I think all the dots will get automatically connected, and all interested people can start working in research in actually deciphering what is written in Sanskrit, make it available in Hindi, English, Marathi, Telugu, Bengali, Assamese, all of these Indian languages. Thereby, people will start understanding what was done in the past. But being happy with what was done in the past is not good enough. How it is relevant to today's S&T. There are lots of equipment which have been invented in the past 200 odd years in terms of whether it is XRD, whether it is microscopes, electron microscope, traveling electron microscope. All of these are once were using the natural material or biological material, we test them, and same way what nanoparticles were there in some of the Ayurveda medicines, how they were created and what is their size, how it is effective in healthcare system. I think that kind of relevance has to be brought in terms of research, and not stopping at that, how furthering of that research we can do it by way of furthering the ideas which were there at that point in time, and how they can be made relevant in terms of whether it is controlling the pollution, the environmental degradation which has happened, or in terms of all variety, even solar cells, can we develop a new variety of solar cell with higher efficiency, all biological species which are available, more Ayurvedic medicines for taking care of problems like coronavirus. I think these are all challenges which we start addressing. Then that knowledge which was there in the ancient past will become relevant, useful to the society. I think that is the role IIT Kharagpur Center of Excellence should start on.
Thank you so much, sir. It was really a wonderful pointer, and I think the points raised by you in terms of the atoms that we should make to bridge and create an ensemble, a galaxy of the database, of which a 300 starting point is already there. The teaching the technical Sanskrit and general Sanskrit in a very popular way, and finding out ways to decipher the literature and conduct research that is not only an extraction of the past, how we position it for the future. I mean, you gave wonderful examples of the role of nanoparticle in Ayurveda and in health sciences, environmental pollution, and combating environmental degradation and the various challenges that we have today. I think it's a very good starting point. So we'll try and have one or two more rounds, but with this we go to Professor Ghosh, and I know sir, we know sir, and I know his exemplary contribution to an approach or the kind of checks and cautions that we should have in these processes. The kind of methodology, the approach, the construct which the scholars, the faculty, and the students who are directly associated with the center or indirectly associated with the center should take up. So, sir, what will be your guidance in regarding to formulate a broad methodology that should be followed by the people who are pursuing the objectives of taking the center forward and reposition the role of India's science and technology at the national level and also at the global level, and repair the damage that was once created by the, as Professor Sahastra said, by the Macaulayan onslaught, which had put a repose or a stop to the continuity of a few thousand years prior to it. So, Professor Ghosh.
Can you hear me, Professor Sen?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to this wonderful session, and meeting old wonderful friends like Professor Sahastra, Professor Dubey is always a matter of joy. And also thanks to coronavirus, because of this online sessions, I have met Professor Sahastra at least 4 times in the last few months, which has been not possible for the last few years. So Professor Sahastra has given a wonderful introduction, being at the helm of affairs, and I think I myself feel so happy that such wonderful steps have been taken. In fact, as Professor Sen has mentioned, long back I tried to bring such things. More than 20 years back, I think, perhaps sometime in 99, I brought a proposal in the Senate of IIT Kharagpur that for teaching Sanskrit in the Department of Humanities as a regular course. It was agreed upon. A lot of debates were there. Obviously, you can realize, being in the state of West Bengal, it cannot go without that. But ultimately, everybody more or less supported, and the proposal was approved. And I think as a result of that, now Kharagpur IIT has professional education in Sanskrit. Now, as so far as the question posed to me, I'll mention few things, both suggestion and also a bit of caution. Suggestion is that I have always observed one very important point about IIT Kharagpur, that it is the one single institution with the largest possible or widest possible spectrum of activities. Starting from rural development, it goes to VLSI technology. So I think it is a very appropriate place, an institution for starting this kind of activity, which obviously will be spreading into many other institutions of the country. Now here, first of all, as Professor Sahastra had mentioned, quite a few areas very nicely. There are few areas I think I'll mention where IIT Kharagpur is perhaps can play a very important major role. As I mentioned that, the most important contribution of IIT Kharagpur can be being primarily a science technology university, because the core competence areas are all or mostly are in science and technology, that you should help in providing all the major resources of scientific methodology for investigation. Like, say, for example, you should initiate certain academic programs in the area of archaeology, which obviously you have faculty members like Professor Anil Sarkar, who have published in Nature wonderful results about their excavation at Virana. Archaeology, you can help also in providing modern technical help, like developing new kind of ground penetrating radars, so that without disturbing the top level, that is one of the major problems of our country, that most of the important archaeological sites where there are settlements above. And I think some technology, because you are also having experts in the area of computer science, that you can develop some technology like CAT scan, as you do, developing underground image using ground penetrating radars. If you can do some important work in this direction, you will help both the underground archaeological investigation and also underwater archaeological investigation. So one area IIT Kharagpur, this is just an example, is developing new technology and new gadgets and instruments and devices which can help the traditional areas like archaeology. Then you have a biotechnology department, you have agricultural biotechnology, you have chemistry. You should also develop expertise in the area of paleobotany and also paleoclimatology. These are two very important areas which can help in studying many things of the proto-historic period of our country. So, as you already have an Institute of Center for Atmospheric Science, which was started by Professor Dubey, I think so you can develop academic programs in the area of paleoclimatology and paleobotany and such things, which are very important. And I think no other institute, I don't find anybody has started formal academic courses in these areas. Third point I'll say is, of course, that many institutes are working, the computer science, vis-a-vis computer, the language. So whether it is decipherment of your Inda script or understanding the Vedic Sanskrit in a proper way, in all these areas, the computer science has been very useful. And that, of course, many institutes have worked in the past, including my institute, IIT Kharagpur. And that is one area, obviously, you can continue to develop more activities in the area because you have such great persons in the area of computer science. And then geology is a very important area in understanding many things of our text. Like even the Rigvedic Saraswati River, its reality was never accepted by many of the scholars. But gradually, through predominantly your geological studies, sedimentological studies, and your pictures taken by the satellites where you can see all the paleo channels, etc. That is another area with your expertise in geology, geophysics, etc. You can definitely develop. So these are some examples what I wanted to say. You develop some currently not available exotic new kinds of courses in these areas which help to understand and help to rather unravel many parts of our protohistoric period. So you can also help the conventional areas of our archaeology, etc. Through your development, as I mentioned, by new machines, new devices, new techniques. Like you can have a CAT scan type of system where you can form image of the underground man-made objects if there are any. So you can then find out whether under Rakhigadi there are structures and how big are they, how extensive are they. You can investigate the old Pataliputra which is under the current day, present day Patna city, and all these things you can do. So one sense you can develop new technology which can help in studying our past, and you can also help by creating new courses which are essential, which are not conventional courses in any university. You can also do that. Third, I will put the word of caution. Being a reputed institute, you should never do anything which will make all the activities somewhat, credibility should not be lost. I think you know very well that when you talk about ancient India, there will be always certain pressures, certain criticisms, certain political overtones, which should be always, your institute should be careful to avoid those things and should always maintain the most important thing in your work will be credibility of what you are doing. With this, I hope that, and with a person like Professor Sahastra at the helm of affairs, I think your center will become truly a new, it will start new horizons, or it will bring out new subjects, new areas, new courses, and completely new disciplines may come out of that. And I have all the very best wishes for this new center, and I congratulate you of having the credit of bagging the first center in this direction. And thank you, Professor Sahastra. You have been very helpful in this, I can understand. And this I started long back, but I was not successful, as you can realize. But I am very happy to see that ultimately it is happening. Thank you very much.
So this was absolutely exhaustive, and this gives us a whole palette of the considerations, all your wonderful, they are just not suggestions, they are all the pointers to really formulate and pinpoint the ways and the means to formulate the non-conventional new courses. So these are your wonderful words. And then go beyond the conventional domains of research and contribute to the existing areas of research and make them unconventional, and bring in the various non-conventional and the most available latest technologies like GPR, the photoluminescence studies, some of them as you said, and include very contributory areas, which Smithsonian institution or the National Geographic they use, like paleobotany and the various paleo channel studies, including the geological, the sedimentary, the satellite images on the water sciences that we have. So this is excellent, but I think more important along with this is also the word of caution which came to you, because we should always maintain the integrity, the sanctity, and the boundary conditions of how much we do and what's exactly is our purview and the limits. So this is absolutely wonderful. So with this, I go on to another great expert, Professor Shishir Kumar Dubey, and over the phone with Sir, I was having several discussion. In fact, Sir was blessing us and Sir was giving me some ideas, as he has been always giving in the years when he was physically here for about 5 years as one of a former director. And I think what became evident in that conversation is that Sir was trying to pinpoint two very important things, and we wish to ask you not a question, an observation there, and Sir, you may kindly expand, is that on the one hand, there is, as it was evident in your speech, on the one hand, there is an apparent neglect or an apathy of what we think is Indian, and an apparent affinity and clinging on to what is modern or Western. And on the other hand, it was like a toggle, the other side, you talked about an integration of both the worlds so that a very composite, combinatorial, synthetic approach can be formed. So Sir, whatever little conversation that we are having on the phone, Sir, you may kindly elaborate on that and explain us and make us understand and train us in the line so that we can pick up this big challenge, because it's just not a center and it's just not a great celebration. It's actually celebrating every week and month and the coming years with a lot of seriousness, diligence and exploration. So Sir, we like to hear from you some of the things which you're saying in a nutshell. Sir, you may kindly unmute. Sir, your mic please. Sir, you may unmute. Sir, your mic please. Yeah, sir, it's okay. Yeah.
It's okay. Okay. So first of all, I would like to thank IIT Kharagpur for inviting me to this very important meeting, because the subject of the meeting has been very dear to me for many, many years. But of course, I have not been able to do it at that level, but at some level I did when I was working in the coastal engineering or coastal marine hazards. At that time I worked. I will probably briefly mention those things, how I integrated those modern technology to our ancient technology, or our what we call the paramparagat technology, those things. Well, but besides thanking the IIT Kharagpur, I must also take the opportunity to congratulate IIT Kharagpur to starting the first center in this important area. Thanks to Professor Anil Sahastra and of course Professor Amitabh Ghosh, who will be very close to IIT, lives very close to IIT Kharagpur and will be available at any time. Thanks to Professor Tewari. I am sure without the interest of the Professor Tewari, it would not have happened. Well, as I mentioned that, as Professor Sen mentioned, that I have had a little talk with him on the telephone about this technology. Well, without any, don't think otherwise, I must say, and I can tell you what we are discussing today. I am a retired person, that's why I can say whatever I want to say, and I will definitely say. Whatever we are discussing today, if we would have been discussing the same thing about 10 years back or 7-8 years back, I would have been definitely identified as one of the group. And the group was very clear what I would have been identified. I would have been identified as Sampradayic, a communal person that who want to start the Sanskrit or want to start the Vedant or Vedic science or that kind of thing in the IIT. Why I am saying this thing, I am sorry, if anybody is hurt by saying this thing. When I joined IIT Kharagpur in 2002, immediately the day I joined, second day, one senior reporter from the Indian Express, he came and met me and he started discussing. At that time I discussed with him and I mentioned this, that whatever is our traditional technology, that should also be included in this one. And besides traditional technology, I also mentioned about the Vedanta and Vedic science and all those things. Well, sorry to say, next day on the first page in the Calcutta Indian Express, it was mentioned that the new director of the IIT Kharagpur will start teaching the Ramayana and Mahabharata in the IIT. So that was the kind of that, well, I didn't very, very much better the Indian Express wanted to write at that time. They have written at that time, but my time in 5 years told what I want to do. So, well, ladies and gentlemen, sorry, it was coming from the ladies and gentlemen, normally we mentioned, well, gentlemen. So I am very grateful to be here with you. Let me start telling what I think about this we can do. When we say the Vedic science or the Vedic technology or whatever we say, in the Vedic science, if you see, these are the sutras only. And the sutras are very short code. And these short codes are very difficult, and unless you know the science very well, you cannot expand those sutras. Of course, I can give one example, because I also worked in India Meteorological Department for some time. If you see the logo of the India Meteorological Department, the logo says Adityat Jayate Vrishtihi. Now this is a small code, just a suit to that Adityat Jayate Vrishtihi, but it contains the whole thermodynamics of the atmosphere, whole water cycle of the atmosphere. Everything is contained in this small sutra. So these sutras, similarly there are many other sutras also there. I will not go in those things in detail. But the Professor Ghosh mentioned about the architecture. There are sutras about the architecture, and architecture has been, of course, in the ancient Indian science or the Indian technology was a very important subject. I give you one example. In 2013, month of August, the heavy precipitation in Kedarnath area, and everything was washed away. Nothing happened to the Kedarnath temple. Nothing, not a single damage to the Kedarnath temple. So this was the technology. When the Kedarnath temple probably was built at that time, the architecture used that kind of architecture. They knew what will be the direction of the flood if the water is coming through the rivers in that direction, or the heavy precipitation takes place. They understood that science very well. So the same kind of thing, if suppose, I'm not saying we start right from the Vedanta, but whatever is there in the Vedanta is actually they summarize all these sutras, what are there in the 4 Vedas, and they have been expanded in Srimad Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, all the Upanishads. If you start to look into those things, these sutras have been expanded and explained about these sutras. But maybe probably they require further understanding, and that will be possible only if the Sanskrit is taught. As Professor Anil mentioned, not just to start from the Panini grammar of the Sanskrit and then suddenly the students start leaving to what it is. But if we start with the spoken Sanskrit, which is very common. Some of the villages, probably in Karnataka, I understand, still people speak the Sanskrit in those villages. So I met somebody from one of these villages, and he was telling that the postman who come and deliver the post and all those things, they also know the Sanskrit when they are coming to the villages. But the Sanskrit is essential, because without understanding the language in which this ancient well, I'm switching over to the language. हमारे जो ग्रंथ जो हैं जिस भाषा में लिखे गए हैं, अगर हम उस भाषा को ठीक से नहीं समझ पाएंगे तो हम ये नहीं समझ पाएंगे कि उस भाषा में वो क्या कहना चाहते हैं. जब हम वो समझ पाएंगे तभी हम आगे बढ़ सकते हैं. Now, how do we integrate these things? It's not that thing whatever about the Vedic science that was the final and that was the end. After that, some work had been done, but then what happened? We had the Mughal Samraj, we had the British Samraj, और ब्रिटिश साम्राज्य में क्या हुआ? मैकाले ने पार्लियामेंट में अपने यहाँ इंग्लैंड में उसने कहा कि इंडिया में जो भी इंडियन लैंग्वेज है या इंडियन कल्चर है या इंडियन रिलेटेड कोई चीज है, उसको आप रिप्लेस कर दीजिए बिल्कुल वेस्टर्न से और उसको नीचा दिखाइए, जिससे कि इंडिया वाले हमेशा हमारे नीचे रहेंगे. तो उस वक्त जो कुछ भी जितना भी थोड़ा बहुत भी अगर ज्ञान इसके बारे में था, वैदिक साइंस के बारे में, वैदिक टेक्नोलॉजी के बारे में, उसको एकदम किनारे कर दिया गया, उसको बीच में नहीं लाया गया. तो धीरे धीरे संस्कृत भी लोगों ने पढ़ना कम कर दिया, बहुत थोड़े लोगों ने संस्कृत पढ़ा. हम लोग ऐसे परिवार से आते थे जहाँ थोड़ी बहुत संस्कृत बोली तो पढ़ी जाती थी, तो संस्कृत पर इसलिए पढ़ा कि भागवत गीता आया और दूसरे ग्रंथ पढ़ा करते थे, इसलिए संस्कृत को पढ़ना जरूरी समझा. लेकिन हम IIT खड़गपुर को स्वयं फिर बधाई देना चाहेंगे कि वो संस्कृत प्रारंभ करें, और कभी जब संस्कृत प्रारंभ करें तो मुझे भी जरूर इनवाइट करें, क्योंकि मैं भी उनको संस्कृत में ही आके भाषण दूंगा जब वो मुझे इनवाइट करेंगे. हालांकि संस्कृत भाषी मैं नहीं हूँ, हिंदी भाषी हूँ, लेकिन फिर भी संस्कृत में मैं बोल सकता हूँ. संस्कृत में काफी कुछ मैंने पढ़ा हुआ है. अब मैं आपको कमिंग टू द साइंस पार्ट ऑफ दिस थिंग, साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी, आई हैव एक्चुअली noted on a very important discussion, or I may say, well, it's a discussion, not interview. A discussion has taken place between there is institute, Bhakti Vedanta Institute, and Dr. D.K. Singh of the Bhakti Vedanta Institute. He had a discussion with Professor S.K. Mukherjee, who is the former Vice Chancellor of the Kalyani University and former Vice Chancellor of the Calcutta University. He had the discussion, and it was very interesting discussion. It was the discussion about the evolution of the life, evolution of the universe. हमारा ब्रह्मांड किस तरह से बना, यहाँ पर पृथ्वी पर जीवन किस तरह से बना, और विज्ञान और प्रौद्योगिकी के संबंध में भी बहुत ही डिस्कशन हुआ. हमने उसमें से कुछ पॉइंट मुझे भूल न जाए, इसलिए हमने वो अपने साथ उस पॉइंट को रखा है. आई विल नॉट रीड ऑल द पॉइंट, बट सम ऑफ द पॉइंट्स आई वुड लाइक टू रीड फॉर यू. Dr. T.D. Singh, sorry, I just gave the wrong name. Dr. T.D. Singh, he is the director of the Bhakti Vedanta Institute and the president of the BSER Foundation, and Professor Mukherjee, former vice chancellor of the Kalyani University and the Calcutta University. So the discussion. In the discussion, Professor T.D. Singh says, I have noted down just one sentence, I will just read that thing. I would like to suggest that the new science should include the concept of spirituality. The whole discussion was about the science and spirituality, and therefore the Vedanta and Vedantic science came into the picture. The Professor T.D. Singh again says, according to Vedantic conception, spirituality is the sublime science of the soul, that is Atma. Professor Mukherjee mentioned we need to bring the elements of the spirituality in science in order to combat the destructive aspects of science. The science has a destructive aspect that was brought out by the Professor Mukherjee during the discussion, and we all know that thing. The first thing what the scientist, if he is a destructive scientist, will try to use science for destruction. I was giving lecture somewhere on the tropical cyclones and storm surges. The host of the institute, I will not name the institute because it's sensitive, the host of the institute mentioned that Professor Dubey works on the tropical cyclone and storm surges, and he will be able to tell us how we can use the tropical cyclone and storm surges as a destructive element to kill our neighborhood persons, so that this can be used by our armed forces. I had to mention in the lecture, look here, when we work in this area, there is a UN agency, and the UN agency wants to work us in this area to help the country and help the neighboring country. So that's the same thing that Professor Mukherjee has repeated here. I will further read probably about the Professor Mukherjee another thing, but Professor Dr. T.D. Singh says, India is known as a land rooted in spiritual culture. The time is right for Indian scientists and technologists to launch applied spiritual science for the welfare of the humanity. So I am sure the applied spiritual science will be one of the part of this center of excellence, and it should be part of the center of excellence. I will be able to probably contribute or send more information in this. Dr. T.D. Singh further says, by incorporating spirituality within science and technology, we will be able to decide the morality and ethics of the human action. I am a scientist. I work in the science, but well, I tell you, most of the scientists, they don't follow the ethics. Especially after I am not criticizing the University Grants Commission or any government organization, especially after the University Grants Commission has implemented that for the universities, in some promotion system is there. In that promotion system, they call PBAS, sub-performance based assessment system. So many publications should be there. Initially after that, there have been so many science journals which have appeared, which you do not know. It all appears to be International Journal of Computer Science and Technology. You find out from where it appears, you will find from Meerut. This is being published from Meerut. It is the International Journal of the Computer Science and Technology. Similarly, so many. So they publish the paper by taking the money. Within a month, you can publish 4 or 5 papers and then submit your PBAS form. So this is not the good thing. Similarly, आपको Dahai wali ne mentioned the science, using the science for destructive aim is not good. So we will have to control that thing. AICT, of course, very much there. The AICT can obviously look at things. These things is not happening. The last one I will read. There are so many quotations, but the last from Professor Mukherjee. Application of science requires wisdom. Where to use and where not to use science. wisdom does not come by knowledge alone. There you need elements of spirituality. Some people say that the corona has occurred because of the use of the science or misuse of the science. I do not know whether it has due to the misuse or the use of the science. If it has been the misuse of the science, not only in India but many other international agencies have mentioned this kind of thing, or persons have mentioned this kind of thing. So this Professor Mukherjee, what he has mentioned was very good, because the person who has used this thing to produce this kind of the virus, he has not used the wisdom. Thank you very much. I thank very much. I will not like to say further because the time I was told will not allow you to go in detail. So that's why I have noted down these things. I hope this will be helpful. Again, I congratulate IIT Kharagpur to have this center, and thanks for inviting me to be here before the start of the center. Thank you. Jai Hind.
So thank you so much, sir. I think these were, your pointers are like the words of wisdom. I mean, the initial discussion and that particular sutra that you mentioned from the Rig Veda, Aditya Jayate Vrishti, and I checked with that, the whole thermodynamic cycle, the second law of thermodynamics, and the connections with Panchagni Vidya, which is also there in Chandogya Upanishads and others. I was checking on that, and it's absolutely fantastic to see how our ancient rishis could perceive the cosmic cycles, the rain cycles, the food cycles, then the ecological cycle, and then the much higher cycles, the 5 levels of them, especially the Panchagni Vidya. And the last point that you said, the application of morality and ethics, and the application of science that requires wisdom. I think that is a point that we need to explore in a very safe way. And sir will request, if it's possible, for you to send that note you have to us. And I think we'll also find that from our sources and look at the dialogue between Dr. T.D. Singh and Professor S.K. Mukherjee very carefully and pick up more things from here. So at this point, sir, we are almost coming to the end of the panel discussion, and I'll request our Professor Shomesh Kumar to come and say some of the remarks. It's not a concluding remark because nothing is getting concluded today. It is actually a new beginning. It's a new inception point. So I'll request Professor Kumar to do that wonderful task, and also invite Professor Tewari to say some final words.
So it has been a very, very inspiring session. Firstly, I would like to say about this session. Thank you, Professor Sahastra. You mentioned that you are basically the pioneer to create the cell, and then some persons have joined also. So, and you have also created certain database. So, I mean, that's a very good beginning, and we will take forward from there. I mean, we will use that. And the best advice that you have given is that all the knowledge, whatever we try to get or extract from what ancient text, etc., it should have a contemporary application. Otherwise, it is just for a nostalgical purpose. What you mentioned about nanoparticles or biology or Ayurvedic medicines, we should make it in such a way, we should use that information or knowledge, and we should develop further in such a way that it is used for the present day. So I think, sir, your suggestion is very, very good, and we will keep into mind when we start the center here. Professor Ghosh has mentioned many important points, but again, the important technical point, which is from the point of view as we are a technical institute, is that we should provide technical support in the terms of equipments, for example, in geology or archaeology, or even in the Center for this Ocean, River and Land Sciences, etc., so that the ancient thing moves to the contemporary and the current thing. So, sir, thank you very much for your important suggestions. Of course, we have many more of your suggestions all the time with us. Finally, Professor Dubey sir, you have mentioned that deciphering of the sutras, the small sutras, they contain deep meanings, and of course we have seen that thing, and because everywhere we write a small sutra like Yogakshemam, Mahamyam, or many other kind of things. Even for IIT Kharagpur you have Yoga, Karma, Sukhaushalam, etc. So, and second point is about the course on Sanskrit, spoken Sanskrit, so that the people really feel tempted to learn it. So certainly when we initiate this center, we will keep into mind your advice. Thank you very much, sir, for your nice thing. So I once again thank all the esteemed panelists who have come here and spent their valuable time to come and present their thing. Just to give maybe 2 minutes of concluding remarks from my side on the entire organization. Well, this is a brainchild of our director, Professor V.K. Tewari, who one day called a meeting for some of us, and he said that let us have a international webinar and let us call very, very esteemed people. I mean, actually we have started a course on history of science and technology in ancient India for the last 2 years, and I am also one of the teachers for the mathematics portion. But he said, no, you don't use your own people that we just start giving lectures there. Make it an international thing so that there is an awareness at a national and international level. And that was one of the suggestions which motivated us to contact very, very eminent people. And therefore we had people like Professor M.D. Srinivas, Professor Gerard Houet from France, Professor Rajrani Kalra from UCLA, and so on. So we had all very, very esteemed speakers for the last 3 days, and the level of the talks included almost all prominent areas, including our mathematics, positional physics and positional astronomy, archaeology, ecology, terrestrial science, economics, and then of course linguistics and Sanskrit and so on. So with that view, I mean, it has been a very, very fulfilling experience for all of us, and with that we have a renewed energy to start this one. What very, very important point which has come out is that when we talk about Vedic sciences or ancient sciences, it does not mean that there was something earlier and then everything was forgotten. No, it means that there is a continuous development of thought, continuous development of the subjects, as I have learned from the mathematics portion because I was teaching that thing. So we found that for maybe 200 BC or 300 BC itself, the numeral systems started the use of the numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And then using that, the place value system was developed and the decimal system. And then I was reading the portions from Lalita Vistar Sutra, which is around, say, 400 AD. And we found the numbers of the order 10 to the power 421. And it is not that they had just written 10 to the power 421, they had the number system. So the number systems were like in the usual, like we have 10, 100, 1000, then they had in the order of 100, then they had in the order of 10 to the power 3, then they had in order of 10 to the power 7, and then the number system increased gradually, and the largest number which I saw there, it was written as 10 to the power 421, and that is around 458 AD. And similarly, we talked about the small numbers, and then I found a number at a scale of 7, and it is talking about Parmanu Raja. So, and they had a scale which goes up to 10 to the power minus 7. And then, of course, whatever discussion we had in our session, as well as we have the works of Bhaskara 1, we have works of Brahmagupta, we have Bhaskaracharya 2, and then we have Sridharacharya, then we have Madhava, which went on to infinite series, we can say beginning of the calculus. And of course, in yesterday's presentation in the mathematics session, we saw that even iterative techniques of numerical analysis were used, and which gave a very, very fast convergence for the value of sine theta evaluation. Using a cubic equation, how to solve it, and so it is there. And as a professor of mathematics, I also get to review some manuscripts, and I got some manuscripts which contained, which were on the ancient, so there is a journal called Ganita, so I got some manuscripts for review of that, and I found that, so there are manuscripts in 12th century, there are manuscripts from 14th century, there is manuscript from 16th century, and so on. So it's a continuous evaluation. It does not mean that people were not working. It may happen, as I think some other people have already, our esteemed panelists have pointed out, that there was a sort of lack, or maybe a ploy to downgrade our education system, maybe due to some reasons like Macaulay or whatever, something is there. So people thought that, oh, no, we didn't have. But actually there was everything, the continuous evaluation. And as Professor Ghosh told in his lecture on the physics session, that even the positional astronomy system was there, and he actually went back to some dates of 8300 BC. So therefore, there is a continuous evaluation. So what we need now, when we bring out this system in a institution of eminence like IIT Kharagpur, so our aim should be to immediately connect those things to the contemporary thing, to show that there is a continuation of the knowledge system, that there is a continuation, and the people who have been working there. With that, this brings us to a close of this wonderful international webinar. I would request you can say the pioneer for this effort, our director, Professor V.K. Tewari, to just say a few concluding words, and then I would request Professor Anuradha Chaudhary to say a vote of thanks.
Namaskar to all of you. Sir, I would like to say that I am very humbled and very much fortunate, I consider myself, that the two ex-directors are there in this panel. Sir, let me tell you that this is not my brainchild. In fact, all of you said, see, for example, Professor Ghosh said that 20 years back, he wanted that Sanskrit should be taught. Professor Dubey, when he came here, he wanted to say something on that, and there were various, you can say that various deviations of whatever it was done. Well, in fact, sir, you know that now we are talking of natural language processing. I was just about 3-4 years back, I was going through a book, and I wanted to know about what is this natural language processing. And there I could know that Bhattacharyya, who has said that all this mathematics is of 8 items, and that's where, that means addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, square, square root, cube, and cube root. And ultimately he said that this is only 2 things, addition and subtraction. And in fact, that is what is that in the today's language of electrons, movement, positive and then negative, that we are talking of, and the same thing that we talk in computer science as 1 and 0. So I was thinking that when I was talking to Professor Joy Sen and Professor Somesh Kumar one day, I was very fascinated because I know Professor Joy Sen has been doing a lot of things in the Sandhi project that Professor Ghosh knows, Professor Dubey also knows about it, and Professor, I'm sure Professor Anil also knows about it. And I had this year's book fair, I had gone to Calcutta, and there I saw his stall, and in fact I picked up a few books from him, and then I was going through that. And the other day when we were about maybe about a month back, right, both of us were, I mean all 3 of us were sitting, and then we were discussing why not go back to see what were there. And maybe because we have already, sir, you please see that it is not something different that we are doing. We have already a center of excellence or Reiki center of happiness. We have already one center for classical and fine arts. So when we have these, definitely they are also researching on 100 ragas. I was talking to the professor in charge or the chairperson of that classical and folk arts, Professor Pallab Das Gupta. He's a professor of computer science. And he was telling that we are rehearsing on 100 ragas. Now you see that they are trying to see something related to what it was and what it is now in the language of artificial intelligence and machine learning. So possibly when we are discussing these, and the other day, I think I sat on the first day after inauguration, I could not sit, but yesterday I was there for about whole day, and today also for about last 2 hours. And I can tell you, sir, that so many things are there. One gentleman, yesterday there was one session in which one lady from New Zealand and one professor from IIT Bombay. Now virtually it was a duet, and that he was talking the Sanskrit slokas and the pads, and then she was telling the description of that. I think they both have worked together. Now you see, it was a knowledge to me. We have not seen how that sine theta plus alpha is equal to whatever is that, we know it, how it has come. So when I saw the explanation, I was thinking that my freshmen, the students, actually, sir, they will be very much interested to know as to how this has come. Because when they come here, sir, I have been in the system for last 40 years, because I have graduated here, and I can say that I did a MTech, MTech, PhD, and virtually grown in this campus. I can tell you, I have gone to all IITs because I was chairman, JE also organizing chairman when Professor Dubey was the organizing director that time in 2003 to 2006. And I can tell you, we have talked to several students, and when they come to IITs, irrespective of which IIT, I can tell you across IITs, the boys say, we don't get challenging teaching after cracking such a toughest examination in the world at 10+2 level. Everybody admits in the world. So I think once they come to know that these are the subtle things which there is a science behind it. So I'm sure the students will be interested to go for learning at least a course on that. Sir, I can tell you that Professor Ghosh told us that there is a caution. Sir, we will definitely take the caution. And in today's age, when AI ML is being utilized in every aspect, and the pandemic corona has already shown people that it is the Ayurveda and the yoga which is going to keep you fit, no medicine available. So I'm sure people will appreciate this point of view. And so they will not say that, okay, something is being said and all that. It has come out on 6th, the minister has already announced, and we are going ahead. But we will definitely have a small core group, advisory group from people like you, all of you who are here, because you will advise us as to how we should in fact put this particular center in such a way that there is a very good synergy between the various branches, and the students should take real interest and really go about what exactly was there earlier and what is now available. What are the things which they can do? In fact, many of them, and that is why in order to give some sort of incentives to the people who will work in the center, we have also proposed to the minister that there should be award like Santi Swarup Bhunarkar Award. Why not? There are many. I think many people in this country, Professor Sastbuddhe said that they are working in different universities. So why not? We should have something like this which will encourage. And why, when we were Vishwaguru at one time, why we cannot, when we are thinking of Vishwaguru, we should be. And in fact, the young generation, today the NEP talking of Sanskrit. Sir, I can tell you, Sanskrit is being taught, and Madam Anuradha Chaudhary is here. She will be giving the thanks ceremony, she will be giving. And in fact, we are teaching Sanskrit. And there is a group, sir, Professor Dubey, sir, there is a group also who is talking in Sanskrit. So I spoke in Sanskrit. I know a couple of them are also learning this. And I just the other day I was asked to speak. Of course, I have read Sanskrit in class 8 in Kharagpur only. But I know Sanskrit, but I could not speak my whole lecture into Sanskrit, but I have given them promise that yes, next time when I go there, I will definitely talk in Sanskrit. So I can tell you, sir, Sanskrit is a language which will bind everyone in this world, and you all of you know that 14 universities in Germany, they are teaching Sanskrit. So I think we are forgetting what others are doing, and when others are doing, we find that now it is good and we should also do it. So I think it is high time that we should take forward. I am sure I will take the advice of each one of you, Professor Sahastra, Professor Dubey, my mentor. In fact, I take a lot of advice from him, and when he was here, he has seen my growth. And Professor Ghosh, I just consider a person who with fundamentals, fundas, I say that yes. And I have gone through some of your lectures, sir. And really, I am so happy. In fact, when I joined in the month of January, 31st December, I joined last year. But in the month of January, I had called all the directors. Unfortunately, Professor Dubey could not come because he had some other engagement. But I think this was my idea, that each one of you should tell us as to where this institute should go. Sir, we have given a vision that this institute should be in the top 10 in the world in next 5 years of time. I am sure nobody will think of this, and everybody will laugh at us, but I think we have taken a very tough task, and we are working in this direction. I know Professor Ghosh knows that SMST was started, and today because of that only we have a hospital now. And because of all these things, I know Professor Dubey was there at that time, and the SMST heads of the department, everything was taken. So there, each one of you have contributed somewhere or the other in the growth of this particular institute. I can start right from the beginning, our J.C. Ghosh and everybody. I am grateful to be the 13th director of this institute. I hope this 13th is a good number for me, because I don't consider 1, 3, I consider 4. 1 plus 3 is 4. And that is why I feel that we will be with your help, cooperations, direction, and your advices. I am sure we will be able to take this center as well as the whole institute to a greater height, which our alumni are looking forward. With this, I take your blessings, and I am so happy that you are here. Thank you very much.
Namaste, and it's a very solemn occasion and a very auspicious occasion as well to come to the close of this grand envisioning that took place once more at IIT Kharagpur, and this time with very concrete objectives of having set up a center for excellence in Indian knowledge systems. So I would like to thank the chief patron of this program, Professor V.K. Tewari, for having been the inspiration for this particular program. There are many to thank, but I'll start with our main speakers, the panelists for the final session. And I'd like to start with Professor Anil Sahasrabuddheji, Chairman AICT. Sir, it's been a privilege again to reconnect with you. And we know that you're putting in a lot of effort, and in fact, when you had come here to IIT Kharagpur a few years ago, when Professor Parthapratim Chakraborty had invited you for the program, you had at that point also spoken of including Indian knowledge systems in the engineering courses. So thank you very much once more for being part of this effort at IIT Kharagpur and inspiring us. Professor Amitabh Ghosh, it's always a privilege to reconnect to you, and sir has been a very, very active member of the history of science and technology in ancient India. Every semester he makes it a point to come, and he spends at least 2-3 days to talk to our students about various different dimensions of Indian astronomy, the different sciences, engineering, technology that India has provided. So sir, again, personal pranam and thank you, dhanyavadaha. So that, and our call again that please come back for the course at least, and when the center is here, much more actively, because we have talked of doing small workshops for the children so that they can have first-hand experience, and we look forward to materializing all of that with your guidance. I'd also like to thank you very much. Bahu dhanyavadaha. I'd also like to express my heartfelt gratitude to Professor Shishir Kumar Dubey. Sir, I have met you very, very briefly in 2005 when under your leadership at IIT Kharagpur, Professor Anil, at that time he was a doctoral student, but now he's a professor at IIT Roorkee. Professor Anil Kumar Gauri Shetty, along with Professor Venkapai Desai and all, had organized a Dashadina Sambhashana Shibiram because of your enthusiasm to promote Sanskrit in technical institutes. So at that point, I was fortunate to have come and done that course here. And I had met you briefly to discuss about how we can plant the seed in a more meaningful manner in the soils of IIT Kharagpur. And I'm very humbled to let you know, as a director sir also told you, that that sapling has grown, and we've had more than about 1,000 students who have been exposed to spoken Sanskrit and heritage, where they are taught about some of the basic frameworks of Indian thought. Indian psychology is also taught here. There is also, we have NPTEL courses where more than 10,000 citizens of the country and from abroad have been participating in our courses. So thank you very much for having seen the vision. First there has to be an envisioning, and when the time is right, then the seed is sown. So I would also take this opportunity to express a personal gratitude to Professor Parthapratim Chakraborty, our former director, because while there was an envisioning, he was the person who actually appointed a Sanskrit professor. He took the courage to actually start the History of Science and Technology course at IIT Kharagpur. And a lot of work that has happened is a fallout of those small efforts, but sincere, constant watering of that plant here. So it's a collective effort. Our present director has given it further boost, is protecting it, and now we have a center. So I think this fantastic collective work is what has allowed IIT Kharagpur to be again a pioneering institute in having a center of excellence for Indian knowledge systems. And this program would of course be incomplete without thanking at the inauguration, the minister himself, the Honorable Minister himself, Dr. Ramesh Pokhriyal ji, who made this very encouraging announcement of the center. And there were several other senior dignitaries, Shri Sanjay Dhotre ji, Honorable Minister of State, Ministry of Education, Communication, Electronics and Information Technology, Government of India. There was Shri Amit Khare ji, Secretary, Department of Higher Education, Ministry of Education. There was also Dr. Anil Kothari ji, National Secretary, Shiksha Sanskriti Utthan Nyasa. And coming back to the team itself, so we have our chief patron of the program, Professor Virendra Kumar Tewari ji, and thank him very much for his promotion of this event and giving it its guidance. Our patron, Professor S.K. Bhattacharyya, the Deputy Director, who is also an active teacher on the History of Science and Technology course. So I'd like to thank him also. I would like to thank all our distinguished experts who believed in the importance of this particular endeavor and lent their wholehearted support to make this possible. So, and we had ma'am, Kalra, Professor Kalra ma'am at the end, who at 2 a.m. in the morning was present with all her enthusiasm to share with us about her research. So I think it's very heartening, and we look forward to your continued assistance on the progress of this little child which will grow up and do this nation proud someday. So all the experts this program would not have been possible without the presence of the esteemed chairpersons who are all senior professors of the institute and from outside. So heartfelt gratitude to them. Our respected colleagues, the rapporteurs from the institute and some from outside, who have also given time and been part of this. And then at a more micro level, our chairperson of the session, our chairman of the session, Professor Somesh Kumar, Dean, Students Affairs, who held the baton and took it forward. So thank you very much, sir. We also have our Dean Planning and Coordination, Professor Rajashekhar, PC Rajashekhar, who held the reins on the very first day of the event. So thank you very much, sir. And Professor Joychen has been almost the backbone of the entire program. He's been there from the beginning to the end, and he's held it throughout. Even when we've not been there, he's been there to ensure that the system is working, the backslide is there, the timetable is set, everybody has got the link, so he's been extremely active. So thank you very much, Professor Joyson, and we look forward to more of your guidance. Again, no program is possible, especially in the time of the corona, without the wholehearted dedication of the technical staff. So I would like to express our heartfelt gratitude and a very big round of applause to Professor Shiv Shankar Das and his entire team. So thank you very much. Bahu bahu dhanyavadaha. They are also a solid support for the NPTEL courses. So grateful to them for all of that. And again, this program has been possible. We had more than 750 applications. So to all those people who have directly, and the participants themselves, and to all those people who have directly and indirectly helped in the coordination, the arrangement, the listening, the sharing, we are extremely grateful to all of you. Hardika dhanyavadan vayam nivedayama. And etadukva mama eka vinamra prarthana asti. It's a last prayer. And being a young faculty member of this institute with a lot of hopes about where we can go collectively, I think it would just be wonderful if we can keep the spirit of this particular seminar, where we try to engage the senior group and the youngers to make this not just an exclusive program, but as much as possible an inclusive endeavor. So in the words of the Rig Veda, the last mantra of the Rig Veda says, Sangachadvam Samvadadhvam Samvo Manansi Janatam Deva Bhagam Yatha Purve Sanjanana Upasate. So Sangachadvam, walk together. Samvadadhvam, speak together. Samvo Manansi Janatam, know each other's minds together. Deva Bhagam Yatha Purve Sanjanana Upasate. This entire creation took place because of the aspiration of the supreme Godheads, the subtle figures who came together and made this possible. So this work of Indian knowledge systems is not about competition or one-upmanship. It has to be a work of collaboration. Collaboration with every single individual who can contribute to identify that potential, and those who have contributed as well. So let us hold hands together. Let us receive your support, your blessings more than anything else, and move ahead. So bahu bahu dhanyavadaha. Thank you. Look forward to your physical presence also in the institute, not just the digital one. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Namaskar. Sabko pranam.
So thank you, Professor Sen, Professor Tewari, Professor Somesh Kumar. Thank you very much for inviting me and giving the opportunity to listen to my erstwhile colleagues. Okay, thank you.
Pranam, sir. Pranam.
धन्यवाद.
Thank you. Thank you.
আমি ওকে শুরু করে দিচ্ছি এইটা তোমার okay
Yeah.
so this is acha PPT টা খুলে Start. Namaskar. A great session on Bharata-Tirtha, a part of the international webinar on Indian knowledge systems. Our journey at IIT Kharagpur in pursuit of the various domains, the depths and the breadths of Indian knowledge system has come a long way. There is one major process or an effort or the endeavor of a lot of our experts, the internal faculties and people coming from different universities, has been a course which is called the History of Ancient Indian Science and Technology, or HISTI as an acronym. So today we'll have an overview by Dr. Anuradha Chaudhary, who bears the great mantle of this course, which is like a precursor to the great promise in the making, to add a few other efforts being the Science and Heritage Initiative and the other centers of happiness, the Academy of the Classical and the Folk Arts. So these are the changes, the great urges, the aspirations that's coming to IIT Kharagpur to make the system very holistic. I just like to refer back almost 70 years back to the words of Lady Ranu Mukherjee, who was a pioneer in designing the formulation of IIT Kharagpur. Because she knew other IITs are going to come, but this remains not only as the mother of the entire system, but she also remains as an IIT which is neither in a village nor in a city, but has all the features of entire India, almost vibrating and commensurating with the ethereal vibes of a Gurukul system, where the students come away from a big city into a small town, be very close to the village, enjoy nature, and be interfaced with the best facets of learning and knowledge system. So what can be a better place to have a center of excellence on Indian knowledge systems, which has been promised by the Ministry of Education so well at the outset of this international webinar on Bharata-Tirtha. So it will be really worthwhile to have a glimpse of this course, which will be the first course, the first official structured setup where students are already joining in hundreds to have a glimpse of what they had in the past, what they will be doing in the present, and how they will handle the future to reposition and take India forward as a guide and as a forerunner of the pursuit of Indian science and technology, as one of the representation of the entire global system of sciences and technologies. Over to Dr. Anuradha Chaudhary. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Joysen, for this wonderful introduction, and also for the work that you have personally been doing at Kharagpur, Sandhi, and many other such initiatives to bring in Indian knowledge systems in mainstream. So thank you very much.
Thank you
for giving me this opportunity to present once more to our audience what this course is all about.
You are most welcome.
So, moving on, this course, History of Science and Technology in Ancient India, had its genesis a few in a personal story where I grew up in the Shri Aurobindo ashram in Pondicherry, and inspired by the visions of Shri Aurobindo and the mother, who gave a lot of importance to the role that our knowledge system needs, or the renaissance that needs to take place in India once more, of her indigenous knowledge systems or her native knowledge traditions. So inspired by that as a young person, and also later on when I came to hear about the fantastic scientific knowledge that was there as a student, I decided that it was very important to study Sanskrit in order to be able to delve into these subjects, and also to be able to marry science and technology along with Sanskrit. And that's where this journey began for me personally. The mother also says that just as every child in France needs to know French, every child born in India should know Sanskrit, because Sanskrit is the language of India's soul. India's very thought structures are based on the Sanskritic framework, which have then been energized by the other streams. So the mother Ganga of the Indian languages has been Sanskrit. Tamil and all also have played important roles, and then the other languages have energized it. So that has been the beginning personally for me. So in 2005, when I had the opportunity of visiting IIT Kharagpur under the leadership of the then director, Professor Dubey, who had wanted to promote Sanskrit, so a young group of students under the Indian Heritage Forum, I think it was. So they, at that point, a doctoral student, Anil Gauri Shetty, who is today a professor at IIT Roorkee and doing fantastic amount of service in the promotion of Sanskrit and knowledge traditions there. So he invited me along with Professor Venkapaya Desai from the Civil Engineering Department and many others. So together they contacted Sanskrit Bharati, they invited me. We had more than 100 students, staff, faculty members who then studied Sanskrit, and we realized that there is a thirst for this language and the need to look at our own knowledge traditions, and that's how there was the first beginning for this work. And as you can read, Manjul Bhargav, Professor Manjul Bhargav, the Fields Medal awardee in mathematics from Princeton, he says that students in India should be taught about the great ancient Indian mathematicians like Panini, Pingala, Hemachandra, Aryabhatta and Bhaskara. Their stories and works inspired me, and I think they would inspire students across India. Many of these works were written in Indian languages in beautiful poetry and contain important breakthroughs in the history of mathematics. So moving on, we then had in 2017, once I got recruited in 2016, it was an opportunity to start finally doing work and putting the spade on the ground to see how we can cultivate the soil so that these seeds can be sown and successfully nurtured. So very fortunate to have been in contact with world-renowned scholars, Professor Michel Danino from IIT Gandhinagar, who's doing brilliant work at his own institute, bringing forth or creating knowledge in Indian knowledge systems. Professor K. Ramasubramaniam from IIT Bombay. Professor K. Ramasubramaniam has been one of the stalwarts of Indian mathematics and astronomy, along with Professor Clemency Montel from the University of Canterbury, New Zealand. So we organized a workshop on Introduction to the History of Science in Ancient India in October 2017. And that's where we again had 100 participants from different departments. Also there were faculty members and others who attended it, and there was a thirst once more building up, more concrete manner to know more. They were passionate with questions, etc. So having done this, we then utilized their presence to take it further, and we then had a brainstorming session with there's a little bit of a problem. All right, that's easy. So we had a brainstorming session and formulation of the with Professor Partha-Pratim Chakraborty, the former director of IIT Kharagpur, whom I mentioned valedictory also. So together with the experts who had come, we thought about what are the important courses that would go into the framing of this or the designing of this program, so that our students can at least have an exposure in these premium technology institutes. They needed to know what have been the contributions that India has made in the fields of science and technology across the world, and the whole of development would not be what it was without the valuable contributions of the Indic civilization in different areas of knowledge. So together we thought and planned post history of science and technology in ancient India. And so these are the goals and agendas that we laid down. So we needed to focus on creating an appreciation of India, creating a repository, especially of lost archives for accurate characterization, pursuing evidence-based research into the foundations of the knowledge systems, just like what Professor Anil Sahastra mentioned in his discussion in the last panel that happened at the close of Bharata-Tirtha. And we also had the attempt to revive the lost science and technology that may be relevant today, developing a systematic and scientific way to study history of science and technology in ancient India, and most importantly, bridging the gap between science and humanities, theoretical and action research. So we put together a team of coordinators. So there was Professor V.N. Giri from the Humanities Department, Professor Jinya Mukherjee, Professor Priyadashi Patnaik, the then head of the Humanities and Social Sciences Department, and we came together and proposed a course. So the course structure has these three components: theoretical, empirical and outreach, and various thrust areas that I will be talking to you about. So as you can see also in the lower thing that there is a database repository, exhibitions, dissemination was planned, outreach activities, but how did we nourish all of that? By ensuring that we were giving the right inputs through class lectures, workshops, special lectures, visits to different places, etc. And the thrust areas that we wanted to build up a certain course with themes and modules, where we had to point out the theoretical relevance. This included the context, concepts and correlation. This also involved looking back and seeing what have been the contributions in science, technology, their convergence, and also to use those insights to look forward and work on an epistemological and sustained axiological practice or departures from what we have already garnered. So in order to do this, we connected with a lot of faculty members. We wanted to do this as an in-house exercise, so we collected a lot of faculty members across departments, and we were extremely fortunate that many senior professors collaborated wholeheartedly over and above their existing workload. And so I'll just name some of them as we go. I'll try and recollect all those professors who are very actively teaching on this course and semester. So we have first and foremost the presentation of the worldview, the Indic worldview, done by Professor Jinya Mukherjee from the surgical tools have not changed that much from previous times to today, and how materials matter in the making of those tools. And then very important, another topic that was addressed during the sessions of the Bharata-Tirtha webinar, we have Hindu Rasayana, taught by one of the very senior professors and a very world-renowned professor of chemistry, Professor Pratim Kumar Chottaraj. So he helps them understand the contributions again of ancient India in this domain. For soft innovations, we have Sanskrit and yoga psychology, both that I take to help them focus on the Sanskrit as from a language sciences perspective and to understand it as a valuable tool. So one is a scientific tool in itself, and also as a tool to access this vast knowledge tradition that we heard so much about. Yoga psychology to show them that all this was only capable if the mind was of a certain caliber. So what was the understanding of the mind and its capacities in ancient India and also in contemporary India, but a certain framework that was established during the ancient times. So that is taught through yoga psychology for mind sciences. And Indian aesthetics is a very, very important part of Indian knowledge systems that helps us understand how our emotions, how do we deal with relationships, how do we treat art in to enhance life experiences. This is taught by Professor Priyadarshi Patnaik, the present, he's from a professor of the Humanities and Social Sciences Department, as well as the head of the Reiki Center of Excellence, the Reiki Center of Excellence for the Science of Happiness. So we have the next important domain, which is health and economy, and in that we have two professors teaching Ayurveda. We had Professor Suhita Chatterjee, who from the Humanities and Social Sciences Department. So I'm taking these names because I know that some of you who will be listening are alumni, and you would have a connection with these professors. So you might enjoy this to know that they are also participating in this new movement here. So then we have Dr. Shruti Sharma, who's an external expert, a young doctor of Ayurveda, but very brilliantly she presents the importance of Ayurvedic knowledge to understand our personality type, to understand the kind of diet, food habits we need to have, the dinacharya that students need to follow in order to ensure a healthy life. We also have cuisine and technology, that is, so we have before that, we have yoga physiology and Ayurgenomics that is taught by Professor Jyotirmoy Chatterjee, who is heading the School of Medical Science and Technology. So Sir shows the connections of modern medical discoveries and how they are linked. There's a lot of research happening with ancient knowledge systems there. So he's talking also about Ayurgenomics that Dr. Mitali Mukherjee had spoken of in this webinar. We have then the cuisine and technology by Professor P.K. Das from the Mechanical Department. So Sir talks about how in cuisine itself there is so much of technology that is involved, the kind of vessels, the kind of heat, the kind of, the entire setup. How does that enhance the experience of cooking and the tastes that come from there, that have enthralled the world, in fact. So we also have Professor Venkapaya Desai next from the Civil Engineering Department. Sir is enthusiastic about Sanskrit and one of the real promoters of science of Sanskrit in the institute, the present Dean Faculty. There is a little bit of an issue with I'll go back. So Sir teaches us about plants and stars to show the connection, the astral connections that exist between all the different creations that are there, to help students appreciate that. So why certain planets are associated with certain seeds, etc., and certain plants, etc. We have economics taught by Professor Pulak Mishra from the Humanities and Social Sciences Department. Sir brings in the angle of Arthashastra and also shows how the modern day economics really is developed and the relationships between them. We have measurements, different kinds of measurements that is talked about by Professor Partha Pratim Chakraborty, once again, one of the leading scientists from the artificial intelligence at the Computer Science Department. We have Mathematics by Professor Somesh Kumar sir, and he's the Dean of Students Affairs, as you have heard, the chairman of the entire program. And sir, we're always very grateful because his hands are very full with all the students' activities, and still he believes in this cause and makes the time to come and teach on this course. It's very grateful to sir for his contributions. Then we also have, so astronomy gets taught off and on. We have external experts like Professor Rama Subramaniam, Professor Clemency Montel who come, and along with the Professor Somesh, Professor Amitabh Ghosh also talks about it, and also Somnath Bharadwaj sir. Professor Somnath Bharadwaj from the physics department has taken this course, and he does it whenever he has the time to do it for us. We then have some first-hand research that is emerging from IIT Kharagpur and techniques and methodologies that have been evolved to try to date these ancient civilizations like the Indus Valley civilization. So we have Professor Anindya Sarkar, who is from the Geology and Geophysics department, where their research has been able to establish that the Indus era is about 8,000 years old and not just 5,500 years, and it ended most probably because of weaker monsoon, and there is this notions of water isotopes, etc., that help in the carbon dating, that help in the dating of these ancient civilizations. So sir is also very actively and passionately part of this course when he's here on campus. So we also had Professor Michel Danino, who had in fact enthused the students by talking about the Indus Valley civilization earlier on. Moving on, we have the outreach. So in the outreach, we have institutional cross-learning and exchanges, special lectures and interactive workshops, exposure visits to archaeological sites, and finally media coverage. Next. So we have in the institutional cross-learnings and exchanges, we have made contacts with different organizations, notably the Indian National Museum in Kolkata, where we were trying to establish a kind of a deeper working collaboration, so that we could help from a technology point of view, maybe document the artifacts that are there and make it more interesting for the visitors who come to know more about their own civilization. The special lectures and interactive workshops, as you can see, we had Professor Ram Subramaniam, Professor Michel Danino, Professor Clemency Montel, go back, and some other lectures also, like I mentioned, Professor Amitabh Ghosh. This year we also had Shashikant Joshi ji, an alumnus from IIT Kharagpur, who spoke on ancient mathematics, and he's very passionate about Sanskrit and talks about it as well. Next. So we have, as part of the entire thing, also exposure visits to archaeological sites. So we give them an understanding of Patra. It's an archaeological site nearby in Midnapur from here, about 40 kilometers or so from IIT Kharagpur. And this site is important because IIT Kharagpur has played an instrumental role in the what would you call it? The reinvigorating that site, because it was a complete completely overshadowed and taken over. It was like a ruin, and then with the efforts of Patron ji, who was there, they again reconstructed it with the guidance of IIT Kharagpur faculty members. Media coverage, so all of this put together, we had this IIT Kharagpur course on on history of science and technology in ancient India, which received media coverage, and we were very grateful for that. Moving on, we also involved in some policy makers, so policy making in this. So as you can see, Shri Sanjeev Sanyalji, who was here with us on the first day, who on this second day of the event, and presented on Indian economics. So we had discussed with him how we can make this effort of more significance at a national level. Moving on. So one of the interesting parts of this course is the assessment approach, because we try and awaken the students to the fact that this course is not just like another one to get marks, but we hope that what they study here will touch their hearts in a deeper manner, and leave an impression about them and increase their self-esteem in some way or the other when they go out and meet the world. So the assessment framework that we have is rather innovative. So they do some kind of they create content for blogs, which also involves some media, this video material, and also we give them the task of trying to design a syllabus itself to get a feedback and to see how we can also improve on our outputs as a course. Next. And finally, with the coming in of the NEP to 2020 and so much of discussion that has emerged from that particular policy that was initiated, we have been working on HISTI at IIT Kharagpur, and the way ahead, so as you can see, I have tried to put all the efforts, the past efforts together, the present declarations, and finally the aspiring, looking forward to the establishment in a more concrete manner of the Center of Excellence on Indian Knowledge Systems at IIT Kharagpur, which we hope will take on flight with great enthusiasm by the faculty, the teachers. We look forward to a lot of support from the alumnus and everybody else who can, external expertise who can help us grow richer and if I can add, grow prouder of, but prouder with humility. That is what has been the hallmark of the civilization. It never tried to have an one-upmanship over the others, but Indian knowledge systems, just to know what was there and to see what we can take from there in order to create a better future, a more harmonious, sustainable future for the human race. And Bharata-Tirtha is this pilgrim that we have all undertaken over the last 3 days, and we hope that by taking a dip in the sacred waters of this knowledge tradition, we will be reinvigorated to take this work forward and make a success of this endeavor. So with these few words, I'd like to thank all of you for your very patient and enthusiastic listening, and we look forward to collaborating with people out there and to your support in whichever way possible. This is a collective effort, and let's make it a success. Thank you very much.